Hello everyone. Your blazing star is finally back. I missed you all a bunch. And for today, we are striking back hard with the amazing story, Dragon of the Eldritch by Akamakami64. Get excited. Don't forget subscribe, and support the writer for more of this amazing story. Now let's get started. Issei had never been to a swamp before, and he could safely say he didn't desire to repeat the experience from what he had seen so far. Wet, hot, and many other things he didn't find appreciable in an environment. On a woman, that was another story. Also filled with a few dead bodies, littered around a large opening with something in the middle. The stone ruins of an altar, maybe even the remains of some long-destroyed shrine. So, out of curiosity, is this one of those untouched by modern world tribes, or just one sticking to their way of doing things? Issei asked idly as Gacha methodically yet lazily stabbed every corpse in the head, ensuring they would not raise an undead. Untouched, Yad answered instantly. There are far more of them than the mundane world could fathom, living in realms and spaces just outside of mortal view. When the Americas and Africa were colonized, many people reached out to any power that would protect their homelands. How well did that work out for them? Issei asked in morbid curiosity. Many continue more or less as they always had. Others lost their humanity entirely, Yad mused. Master, Lady Yad, that is the final corpse, Gaktha explained simply. Good. That should make it easier for Lag and the girls, for now at least, Issei said, looking back at the portal. So where to? Gaktha has a lead, Yad explained, nodding to the warrior non. Tracks are leading to and from this place, Master. Whoever left the bodies, Gaktha called out, looking down into the water. I'll take your word for it, Issei mused, not surprised but curious as to what kind of vision allowed her to see footprint through murky shin-deep water. Any idea what they are? Gaktha tilted her head. They might be human. Issei nodded. Lead the way. Yes, Master, Gaktha answered, trudging through the swamp as she followed the path of prints beneath the water. So what are the odds that this is related to the god that took Diodora? Issei asked Yad. Very unlikely, Yad answered. Perhaps they are working together, but it is definitely two different gods at work. Great. Anything you can tell me about this Nikrama character? Issei asked idly. He probably hates you, Yad answered instantly. Wait, what? Issei said in surprise. I haven't met the guy yet unless time travel is involved. It isn't, Yad assured honestly. Nikrama was once similar to the Eldritchians. He grew up believing he was a human, but was in fact a young eldritch trapped in human form. Whispers of your coming have been heard in many. When he started to manifest and grow into his eldritch powers, he became convinced he was the beloved of Azathoth, a human lifted up to eldritch divinity. He was wrong. He didn't take it well. Okay, wow, almost feel bad for the guy, but I think you mentioned he tried to turn everyone on Earth into a zombie cult? Issei realized. Indeed he did. Yad agreed. The party paused as they all three looked to the side. An alligator was floating nearby, staring at them. Issei marveled at how unafraid he felt. He honestly didn't want to hurt the animal. It felt like punching down for any of them to kill it. Fortunately and unfortunately, they didn't have to. Another gator leapt out from the ether, attacking it. But the second gather was clearly undead, flesh missing and rotting on a front leg and one side of the face. Gaktha was about to put both creatures down, but Issei calmly held up his hand, forming his gauntlet as he powered up a dragon shot. Keeping the power low to avoid destroying anything potentially important, he sent it off and vaporized the top half of both creatures. Underpowered that a bit, but it got the job done, Issei mused as they approached the corpses. Are zombie animals a thing too? I mean, it makes sense, but... No, zombies only naturally form from creatures with a higher self-awareness than simple instincts. Alligators are not an animal that edges into that category, Yad remarked as she studied the corpse, her timeless eyes seeing things mortals could never understand. Unsurprisingly, Nikrama has a follower or cult that is weaponizing his essence. We talking magic witch doctor or mad scientist? Issei asked curiously. Does it make a difference, Master? Gaktha asked curiously. Mad scientist if I had to guess, Yad answered. I can see several marks where this body was cut open, stitched up, and injected with something. The zombification essence, I am sure. Fun, Issei said without enthusiasm. Luckily, Our undead reptile left a very good trail, Yad remarked, looking at the water. There was a path of putrid orange taint in the water around the corpse, leading back to wherever it came from. Maybe it'll lead us directly to whoever is doing this. Issei mused. Or just where it had been hunting, Gaktha remarked. Issei paused. Yad, you go search the trail here, Gaktha, and I will follow the footprints. As you desire, Kungur. Do be careful. You are immune to becoming a zombie, but the attempt would not be pleasant all the same, Yad warned as she floated out of the waters and began to fly along the orange trail. I got to learn to do that, Issei remarked dryly. Well, lead on, Gaktha. Yes, master, the warrior nun answered. Meanwhile, to call the air tense as Zenobia and Irina stood guard at the portal while trying not to look cautiously at Lag would have been a massive understatement. Said Eldritch of Doom was busy kicking the bike, that was his horse half. Stop eating the undead. You know that makes us smell horrible afterward, he said, the bike riving in irritation. Lag rolled his eyes, hands in his pocket as he glanced at the agents of the church. Are you too into me? What? Irina asked in alarm. I haven't gotten good at reading human facial expressions, he answered lamely. But I know a lot of human girls that apparently want to court me because they keep glancing at me when they think I'm not looking. We want nothing to do with you. Especially not reproduction, Zenobia denied forcefully. Good. I honestly don't know if a mortal could survive whatever I might sire, he answered with a scowl. Also don't think they'd survive the act, now that I think about it. Irina blinked. Wait, are you a virgin? Yes, Lag answered with a shrug. I've been spending the last few eons either bringing doom to worlds when summoned or contemplating my own existence. Romantic companionship hasn't really crossed my mind. The two females were very weirded out by how this conversation felt. Almost normal. Not quite, obviously, but almost. We're just a bit cautious of you, I suppose. Irina answered honestly. That I'm used to. That I can address or ignore properly. Courting? Not a bit, he remarked idly. So, you and the boss knew each other just after you were both spawned, eh? Well, birthed, but yes, Irina answered. And you Issei's friend? Servant. Servant, yes. Friend, maybe? I'm mainly just someone to help make sure that form of his is safe until he can grow into his power more, he said with a yawn. Something is coming through. They both drew their weapons and looked to the portal. Indeed, out fell a zombie, trying to clumsily get to its feet. Irina stabbed it through the head before it ever could. Seeing the danger was dealt with, Zenobia turned to Lag again. So, why do you serve this Issei? Lag was silent, slowly raising an eyebrow. Even his bike turned a bit more in her direction. I would expect creatures so vast and ancient as the outer gods to take offense to the notion of a mortal not only joining their ranks, but ruling over them, Zenobia said idly. We're not like your terrestrial gods, who bicker over anything and everything, Lag started before answering. In any case, we've known that would happen for a lot of eons. What prophecy? Or the time goddess? Irina asked in confusion before blinking. From Lag? There is one coming dash. Irina didn't have time to finish as the motorcycle suddenly took off, zooming around to strike into the zombie and knock it over. Lag sighed, and while the holy warriors couldn't see it, they cringed as they heard the motorcycle beginning to eat the corpse somehow. Ignore my lower half, he said in frustration. As for your question, no? The queen has been in love with his soul for countless lifetimes. She just waited until he was ready to join her. Lifetimes? Zenobia repeated with a narrowed look. As in, reincarnation? The queen of the Eldritch has been hounding one mortal soul until he agreed to marry her. I feel like you mean something negative by hounding, but yes. Lag answered with a shrug. But, why Issei's soul? Irina asked in concern. Why else would she marry him? She loves him, Lag said bluntly as if it was obvious and written in the stars. Only it was written in something far more permanent and unchanging than mere stars. Azathoth's beloved is the king of the Eldritch and the ruler of the universe, Lag continued idly. That is just a fact of reality we've all been expecting to become important in due time. And it has. You almost make it sound like Issei never had a real choice, Irina said in concern. I don't know how. But just because I'm pretty good at pretending to be human in passing doesn't mean I know how to explain things to a human, Lag remarked uncaringly. You get the hang of it eventually. The female turned in alarm as they saw a purple-haired figure walk out from behind the portal. "Who are you?" Zenobia asked uneasily. "Lady Casagtha?" Lag asked in surprise. Irina and Zenobia winced at the mention of the name, a minor assault on their sanity just hearing it. "Lag, no full names around humans. Actually, no full names at all. You're still not good at doing that without grabbing someone's attention with their own name," Cass said bluntly. "I don't talk to gods too often before now," he reminded. "Is she an ally?" Irina asked cautiously. "I'm here to help the Kungur deal with that disgusting mess someone has been leaking out of their cell," Casagtha said with a disturbing smile. Irina and Zenobia shivered in primeval terror, but Lag, "Is your disguise on wrong? What are you doing with your face?" Lag asked in genuine confusion. Cass rolled her eyes. "I'll be going through. Avoid any clouds or fumes that come out," she warned as she stepped through the portal. "Who, or what exactly was she?" Zenobia asked with a frown. "A great old one of disease and rot," Lag answered. "And I think you would call her Cthulhu's ex-wife, or something like that." "Huh, the Eldritch have family drama too," Irina said a bit numbly. "Disease and rot. Are you sure she's not the source of this?" Zenobia asked skeptically. "Definitely not. Yat said it's Nikrima, so it's Nikrima. I guess Cass has some problem with him too." "You guess?" Zenobia repeated with a furrowed brow. Lag stared at her for a long moment. "What? Do you to think all Eldritch know each other?" Well, kind of," Irina answered sheepishly. "We assumed you had some higher awareness or telepathic way of recognizing each other." "Oh, we do," Lag confirmed with a nod. "But that just means I know who Cass is if I never met her. No other details beyond what I know. The gods all know each other pretty well. I think the gods are what you would consider a clan or close-knit family, while the non-divine Eldritch is all more like extended family or something. Getting cultural lessons from an Eldritch horseman. This isn't how I saw my day going," Irina said absently. Meanwhile, Issei and Gaktha eventually reached drier land, and the young Eldritch King was glad that whatever reality-warping capabilities he had allowed him to kick his pants leg dry rather easily. "We're getting close to something, Master. Many undead, possibly the seal," she informed. "Great. We can plug up this issue then," Issei said as they scaled a small hill near the banks until— "Oh, shit," Issei said as he ducked down to keep from being noticed. On the other side of the hill was a house on the edge of the water, complete with a dock. And there were a lot of zombies in the area. Zombie humans and— "Are those zombies attack dogs?" Issei asked out loud. "It would seem so, Master," Gaktha remarked. "Would you like me to deal with them all for you, Master?" "Nah, I'll join in," Issei said, conjuring the gauntlet onto his hand. "Try not to kill whoever is inside. We might need answers from him." "I doubt it, Master, but I will obey," Gaktha remarked as she shredded her human disguise, taking on her alluring and eyeless true state. "Damn, you're hot in that form," Issei said bluntly as they came over the hill. It was rather easy, really. Gaktha ran through them like butter, as did Issei's gauntlet. And with his own enhanced strength and durability, the zombies were basically moving punching bags. "Wait a minute." Issei stopped at his latest target. It was definitely a man in a lab coat. Wow, did the mad scientist infect himself by accident? He wondered before tossing the zombie at two others. He sent an extremely underpowered dragon shot, vaporizing them and leaving a small crater. The slaughter came to a halt as something shook the ground, an explosion in the distance sending a shockwave over the area. As it rippled through the air, all the corpses turned to dust regardless if they were animated or not. "Lady Yad seems to have put her foot down on the matter," Gaktha remarked in a sensual tone. "Someone within is still alive, Master." "Okay, time to see what's up here," Issei mused as he walked up to the building. He paused as he heard someone screaming inside in a language he didn't recognize. "Nya nie, ko sie stalozi moimi obiektami testawimi." "I wonder when I'll be able to understand any language," he muttered offhandedly, just before he kicked the door in, almost breaking it. Inside was a man, European by the looks of him, wearing a lab coat with a crazed look in his bloodshot eyes. All around the room were computers, equipment for testing, and a medical table that had clearly not been cleaned of blood or anything. "Kim Justice? Azjatiki Dzieko? Tute? Turista?" The man called out in surprise from the computer, grinning suddenly as he made to pull out a gun. "Niwazn," I tak potrzebuję swojego materiału. Before he could even aim it at issei, the young man had already crossed the room and buried his fist in the stomach. The man bent halfway over as he dropped the weapon and began to spit up blood. I almost killed you just now, Issei remarked to himself, staring down at the man. I don't know if it's me losing my humanity or that you probably long lost your own, but I'm having a hard time caring at the moment. Kim Justice? The man groaned out. Seriously, is he German? This one of those cliché mad Nazi scientist things? Issei asked in confusion. He's Polish, actually. Issei looked up in surprise. Cass, what the hell are you doing here? No offense, just surprised. None taken, Kungur, Cass said, sitting on the medical table and waving him off with a smile. I heard Nikrama is acting up, so I came to help. I have issues with him. Uh-huh, Issei said, deciding to poke at that another time. You got any mind-reading powers, so we can find out what this guy was up to? If he's a cultist, or what? My mind-reading powers aren't the most refined. He'll probably die before I get anything valuable, Cass said as she stood up. But I do have another way, if you don't mind me killing him, Kungur. Issei gestured for her to continue. The scientist squinted up at the woman approaching him. Eniol. Cass said nothing and blew a purple mist from her lips. It floated down before seeping into the man's head through every orifice. Issei cringed as blood came out of everywhere as the body began to shrivel up and wrinkle into a husk. Then, he stopped moving, but kept groaning. What did you do? Issei asked curiously. I turned him into a zombie of my own. Now I'm free to sort around his head all I want, Cass answered with a smile, looking up. Ah, I see. He was a scientist who stumbled into this place. Maybe by accident, maybe by a god scheme. He stumbled across Nikrama's leaking seal and began to experiment with the ooze. He didn't know it, but Nikrama has been driving him insane all this time while teaching him how to reactivate portals around the world to spread the zombie plague. So what you're saying is, we just preemptively stopped a zombie apocalypse, Issei summarized in surprise. Yes, I believe we did, Cass answered. Now we just need to go make sure Nikrama hasn't escaped. Polish mad scientists and necromancer gods. Issei knew more or less his life would be interesting after Azza revealed who and what she was, but still, he didn't expect this kind of thing to be happening so casually in his life. Lady Azza? Azza hummed as she looked over at Asia, and found the blonde had a very tired and conflicted look on her face. Asia, are you okay? Have me and Issei been keeping you awake? She asked apologetically. Asia rubbed her arm awkwardly. No, nothing like that, she answered, pausing for a long moment. Lady Azza, you're not going to destroy everything, are you? Azza blinked. Not just here, but her true form did as well. Well, it was less blinking and more her mouths all opening and closing in confusion, but that was her form of blinking. Not important, Azza decided. Why would you ask something like that? She asked with a head tilt. Is there some reason you think I would? Asia looked down. I am sorry, I'm being a bit rude. It's just, I've been having some nightmares. Azza's eyes narrowed, but then they softened as she came to stand beside her. Asia, do you mind if I take us somewhere? You seem like you need some fresh air. Asia squirmed a bit as Azza put an arm around her, but nodded in wordless acceptance. One moment, they were in Issei's room. The next, they were on a beach, ankle deep in the water. Oh, Asia exclaimed in surprise, looking around. Where are we? If it has a name, I am unaware of it. Azza answered casually as she stepped forward a bit into the water lapping at their feet. You humans, you think places like this are pretty, right? Beautiful even. Asia blinked and took it in properly. The undisturbed sands, gently washed by the waves, a field of green that led further inland. And beyond the beach was the sea, sparkling with the light of the sun against its surface. It is lovely, Asia agreed. I don't find anything beautiful here, Azza admitted evenly, crossing her arms. Just photons shining against liquid made from hydrogen and oxygen. Nothing about this is beautiful, precious, or even slightly important to me in terms of sentimentality. Asia shuddered at the casual dismissal. If this world wasn't where many eldritch happened to come together, and the world of my beloved, it could crumble away into dust, and I wouldn't care. I wouldn't even notice. I could do it myself by accident. Azza continued, turning to look at the nun. The blonde felt her heart skip a beat as she looked into the eyes of Azza and felt the weight of the being she truly was, the weight of her existence, and how little this world truly meant to her on its own. A speck of soggy dirt floating in the blackness of space. Were your nightmares about me destroying the earth? Aza asked evenly. No, Asia admitted softly, looking down. Aza tilted her head in surprise. Oh, I dreamed of you destroying everything, Asia explained with a chill up her spine. That you grew, frustrated with reality, and all that got between you and Issei. So you removed them, destroyed everything. The planets, the stars, even the other gods. Everything but you and Issei. Ah, Aza said with a sigh. I could do that. It'd be hard, but I could do it. The hardest part would be dealing with the other eldritch. But if I destroyed every part of reality, reduced it down to nothing, I could revert all of them back to their leastmost states, barely existing as preconceived ideas before they've been thought. Asia started in dread, noticing that Aza was no longer causal or blunt, but almost sad. But I could never do that, she admitted softly as she looked to the sky. For a lot of reasons. On the issei end, it's not even that he'd hate me. It'd just be lonely, just the two of us. Lonely, Asia repeated in surprise. Even if you were with Issei? Of course. I love him, but I love being with him. Not just existing with him, but living with him. I love both of us introducing each other to so many things. But even without that, I love the eldritch, they're my family. And Asia inhaled as Aza's eyes glistened with unshed tears. If I erased everything, my daughter, Nirely, might actually never return, Aza admitted in sadness. She was born of my frustrations. Literally, truly, she is born of my vexation with all of reality. And no matter how much the universe upsets me sometimes, I would never want to do that to my daughter. No matter how much she misbehaves. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have ever asked that. Asia apologized in regret. I should have known. No, you were right to ask. I know I must give off that impression at times. Aza assured with a hint of sheepishness. And I'm sorry for scaring you like this. I just had to be sure where your nightmares were coming from. Coming from? Asia asked in concern. Is someone giving me these nightmares? Aza nodded, but with a smile. Yes, I am. Asia furrowed her brow in silent bewilderment. Not intentionally, Aza explained with a sigh. Your sanity has a bit of damage. That is normal, given you live with me and Issei, under our protection. And it looks like you subconsciously picked up on my link with Nirely. Your link with your daughter? Asia repeated. I don't understand. Why would I have these nightmares? Nirely is my frustrations. And she's also my temptation. It's kind of like how humans sometimes feel the urge to just punch a hole in a wall in anger, even though they know it's a bad idea. I sometimes think about destroying something or everything even though I never would go that far. Aza explained casually. Don't worry. I will never erase the universe, and I have no desire to see my beloved's home be destroyed. Asia slowly smiled in understanding and nodded. Thank you for explaining, Lady Aza. But is there anything you can do about the dreams? She asked hopefully. Don't worry. You won't have any more nightmares about that. Aza answered reassuringly. Hey, Asia. Before we head back, you mind trying to show me what's so fascinating about beaches for humans? Asia looked surprised before nodding. I can certainly try, but are you sure you don't want Lord Issei to do so? No, I'd rather just let him enjoy the sight of me in a swimsuit. Meanwhile, so what brought you here, Cass? Issei asked as they traveled through the swamp in the general direction to where he knew Yad was. I heard Nikramo was causing trouble, Cass said idly. How much do you know about him? Enough. The guy thought Aza was in love with him because he didn't know he was born eldritch, Issei summarized. Yes he did. Nikramo was rather loathsome in the end. I did try to help him find a place among the eldritch, but he just didn't listen, Cass said with a sigh. I grew rather angry when he tried to trick me into helping his plot to turn all of Earth into zombies to worship him. Petty and horrifying. But would that even do anything? Issei asked in morbid curiosity. I know worship helps eldritch gods do things without bringing their full forms to a place. But can zombies actually worship anything? Yes, if the souls are still bound to their bodies. The larger problem with the idea is that zombie cultists would only shrink in numbers if you turned an entire planet, Cass said with a huff. Nikramo could have had everything he might have wanted. Eternal life, worship, servants, peers that cared for him, family even. But he couldn't stand to let go of his vision of being the Sultan to Azza's Sultana. Huh, I'm surprised Azza never had any problem with this guy, Issei said in surprise. Azza finds the idea of being romantic with anyone besides you some hybrid of anathema and absurdly hilarious, Cass said vaguely. Kungur. They both paused and looked to the side where they saw Yad raising her sword up to grab their attention. They made their way over to her as she stood next to what looked like an altar that had been carved into a tree. Yad, good job clearing up the mooks, Issei praised. Yad nodded in thanks while Cass tilted her head. Mooks? Is that another word for zombies? Cass asked curiously. Yad, what's a word she would understand? Issei asked bluntly. Trash mobs, Yad supplied effortlessly. Oh, Cass said, suddenly getting the meaning. Why do you know that word? Issei asked, looking between the two. Are you gamers? Wait, you know what? Never mind. Save that for later. Let's focus on the zombie plague god. About that, Yad said, motioning to the altar. Issei stepped closer and looked. On the top of the altar was a stone bowl. In the middle was some kind of black gem. It was partially filled with a dark blue liquid. Every now and again, a droplet of something orange would fall into the substance. The orange substance would hiss and turn blue as the black gem appeared to devour the original color away. Okay, explain to the unlearned Kungur in the class. Issei requested bluntly. The local humans, descendants of Nikrama's old tribe in fact, live in this swamp. They built these altars at places where Nikrama's seal forms cracks in reality, Yad said, pointing above the bowel. Issei blinked and realized that the sap-like liquid wasn't dripping from the tree, but out of the air itself. These stones nullify Nikrama's influence and turn his ooze into this stuff, Cass said, touching it and covering her fingers in it. Don't tell me they eat it, Issei said with a slightly concerned look. Oh no, they burn it, Cass answered with a smile. It helps them commune with gods, local or otherwise, and, apparently, have lucid dreams. They burn their dead with it so they can have their own eternal dream. Ah, neat. And less gross, Issei said before turning thoughtful. But what does this have to do with our current problem? Inke helk limak yo-yo essay lix tizia lam. As if to answer this question, Issei turned to see a young man racing towards him with some sort of knife and axe in his hands. Issei didn't understand the words, but had a good idea that this was a misunderstanding. He was also sure that Cass and Yad would probably turn this human to paste without second thought. And Issei was kind of happy to realize he was still human enough to care about that. With that in mind, he raced forward and caught the man by the wrists. It was very easy, not just in power, but in speed. Issei threw the man back, just enough to make him fall on his rear. The man glared up at Issei with confusion and anger, head cut nearly bald save some in a braid. A form of local fashion, if Issei had to guess. We are not with the unliving one, Yad stated as she calmly joined Issei. The man blinked at her and seemed to understand immediately. Immediately, he started conversing with Yad. Issei just concluded Yad was using some eldritch magic to translate. Why hadn't anyone taught that to him yet? If he had to guess, either because he didn't ask or because they didn't think it was important. He was drawn out of this musing as Yad and Cass suddenly allowed their forms to gain tentacles and growths emerge from either side of them. The hell, what did I zone out of? Issei asked in surprise. We were just proving who we are, Cass explained with a smile as their human shells regained their normal appearances. The tribal man, rather than being scared or maddened from the sight, actually looked excited. Lax li najder chalin chak seb, li chime, li xe tankank reheb, li cax, ketunchi x dampibialeb, li mocking yo. The man exclaimed in amazement, giving what Issei felt were gestures and words of apology. His people have a better tolerance for the eldritch than most, Yad added in idly. Then the man looked at Issei again with a confused look. On Ian, June moves. The effect was instant, Cass and Yad glaring at the man as if he just muttered a curse against them and their entire family. The man looked terrified as he backed away in fear, shouting pleas of apology and mercy. Wow, 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 Issei called out, putting a hand on both their shoulders. Ladies, calm down, okay? I don't know what he said, but I'm guessing he just insulted me by accident. Cass took a deep breath and leered at the man. On Lee Qa Ray. The man stared for a moment before slowly began to shiver and pale as he looked at Issei, like he was the harbinger of doom. He immediately started groveling, crying, pleading. Ladies? Issei asked. He's pleading for you not to destroy his tribe and the souls of his ancestors, Yad said bluntly. I don't suppose you'd entertain that notion? What? No, of course not. Issei said in disbelief. Damn it. Cass, tell him we're not doing any of that. You obviously have the most social skills in the area. As you wish, Kungur, Cass said, putting on a comforting and reassuring smile as she spoke to the man. Yad, what the hell was that? What did he say to cause that? Issei asked curiously. Yad frowned ever so slightly. He asked if you were our slave. Okay, femdom isn't my thing, obviously, but I'm not surprised. The man saw two eldritch goddesses and I still pass for human most of the time, Issei reminded. Kungur, Yad said firmly. I respect you have the right to tell us not to take retribution on mortals who insult you when you deign to pardon them. Okay. Issei accepted skeptically. Then please accept the right for us and others to be furious when you are insulted, Yad said with a frown. Because the Sultana would have erased anyone that implied that you were in any way her slave, her inferior and unwilling partner. Is taking unintentional insults and honest mistakes so seriously just part of the godhood package? Issei asked with a sigh. Look, I get it and appreciate it. But I'm not going to smite a guy in his village just because he didn't realize I was the king of the Eldritch on sight. So can we make it a rule that I am the one who deals with any insults aimed at me? Ironic. A decree that the most loyal subjects would be tempted to disobey and the most disloyal to obey, Yad remarked with a hum, glancing back. I believe Cass is ready for us to rejoin her and the locals. Issei wordlessly came with Yad, finding the man still kneeling nervously while Cass smiled. We've cleared some things up, Kungur. He deeply apologizes and dash. Just tell him he's forgiven and it's not a problem, Issei said with a sigh. Thank you, young king of the ancient. Thank you for your mercy, the man exclaimed in relief, bowing quickly to Issei. Issei blinked at that, looking at Cass. As I was going to say, I cast a little spell so you can understand him, Cass explained. Oh, thanks, Issei said sheepishly before turning to the man. It's fine, you can get up. What's your name? Bats Balawik Hopel, young ancient. The man answered in relief as he stood up, cautiously meeting Issei's gaze. Are you here to stop the unliving one? Yeah, we took care of the man he controlled, Issei answered. The seal is weakening. Do you know anything about it? The man flinched back. Young king, we would never dash. Sorry, that sounded wrong. Issei waved off an apology. The translation spell didn't seem perfect, which he wasn't surprised by. Eldritch got things across clearly through sheer mental power if needed. I mean, do you know how it happened? Did the man making the zombies cause it? Or was it already weakened when he got here? Yes. The witless priest, serving the unliving without even knowing it, Bat said in understanding. I can tell what we know of him and the unliving one's plot to free himself, but I know not if it will aid you. It definitely won't hurt, Issei decided. Bat's explanation, along with a few clarifications from Yad and Cass, had given Issei a clearer picture of the situation. They were in a realm that wasn't on any maps. It was a pocket dimension that had been formed to keep others from stumbling across Nykrama, especially his cultists. Bat's tribe was one of a few who had offered to live in this realm to guard Nykrama's prison in exchange for the protection living here granted. There were secret paths into this realm. Most outsiders didn't last once stumbling here. The altars with the bowls were part of a system to keep Nykrama's influence at bay. By his very nature, Nykrama's essence still oozed from behind the seal and into reality. The bowls were there to keep it from growing and infecting anyone. The natives maintained the altars and emptied the bowls to keep them from overflowing, and risked the essence pouring over without being purified. All that changed when that Polish scientist showed up. He survived his first encounter here and later returned with company. From what Bat said, the man had been fairly wealthy. At least, that's what Issei assumed, given that the man had come with soldiers or mercenaries, along with other scientists. The doctor had made a base of operations, and soon the tribes found themselves under attack by soldiers and zombies, even animal zombies. By the looks of it, That guy went crazy a while ago and turned everyone with him into a zombie, Issei remarked, recalling a zombie that looked to be another European in a lab coat. Does that mean this threat is at an end? Bats asked curiously as he looked between the gods. Not quite, Yad retorted. That fool of a scientist has been weakening Nykrama's seal. We need to fix it before we leave. Bats looked apologetic. I may not be able to help you, ancients. None in my tribe have laid eyes upon the prison of the unliving one for generations. You haven't? Cass asked in surprise. That's strange. I distinctly remember the seal being at the center of a city. A city? Bats remarked in confusion. Oh, you mean Chabalik. It has been abandoned for a great long many decades, ever since a great flood ruined the harvesting lands there. A random disaster gives our prisoner the chance he needs to wiggle his way free, Yad deduced with a hum. Thanks for the help, Bats. Head home, and try to keep everyone safe while we deal with this, Issei instructed, knowing that this man was likely just going to end up dead, or worse if he came along. Yes, thank you, King of the Ancients, Bats acknowledged with a grateful bow before running off. So, Issei said after he left, spooky abandoned city that may or may not be a city of the undead. Definitely an interesting night, Issei remarked as he crossed his arms in thought. It is day here, Cass noted idly while pointing to the sky. Yeah, but it's still night back in Japan, Issei retorted, scratching his head. Gaktha. Yes, master, the eldritch servant answered, appearing at his side instantly. You mind finding this abandoned city and seeing what the situation looks like? Issei requested. Of course, master. Gaktha accepted, vanishing just as quickly as she appeared. So, Yad, how is this going to play out? What do we need to do? Issei asked with a frown. It depends on the state of the seal, Kungur. If it is well enough, we can simply repair it and leave. If not, he may break out no matter what, Yad exclaimed. That shouldn't be a problem to deal with. Nykrama can't defeat Yad or me, Cass said before glancing off to where Bats had left. But the locals here might find themselves joining the dead from the fallout. And Issei was human enough to be troubled by that. Let's try to avoid that if nothing else, Issei said with a sigh. Master, Gaktha said as she appeared again. I have found it. That was fast, Issei said in praise. It is very easy to see above the tree lines, Master, Gaktha informed. Issei opened his mouth, then closed it in thought. Ladies, do you think this would be a bad time for me to learn how to fly? Or float? Or whatever I can do to tell gravity to fuck off? Kungur, Yed said with a hint of amusement. You are the beloved of Azathoth. You will factually be able to tell gravity to fuck off in time. Meanwhile, Ophis stared at Azathoth. From across reality and unreality, the dragon god of infinity gazed upon the true form of the demon Sultana in all her twisted glory. It would have driven a lesser mind into utter madness and oblivion to do something so foolish, but Ophis was far from lesser. Still, she doubted that the Eldritch Queen noticed her in any meaningful way. Her presence was barely worthy of noticing to that unknowable divinity. Ophis wasn't certain of her own relation to the Eldritch family. She was sure there was one, as all dragons were in fact related to the Eldritch, but her origins were a mystery. Not that she truly cared to learn such things. They were aware of her, but the extraterrestrial divinities had largely left her be, and she had done the same for them. But something had changed in the Eldritch. They were coming to Earth more, and growing more active across the cosmos. She was intimately aware of that, and why. It was impossible to not know why for one like her. All because the Queen had made a human into her king. Issei Haidu. That was his name. She had heard from the Cows Brigade. She didn't know anything about him, but she was pretty sure that she was becoming aware of him. The immense form of Azathoth floated through the vastness of space, accompanied by her court of flesh pipers, abhorrent petitioners, and other terrible things. And there was something else with her. Something around her, behind her, among her all at once, and yet none of those things. There was no human word to describe the relative location, for it was a difference not only in space but time. But it was with her all the same. He was with her all the same. And Ophis knew who she was sensing. Issei Haidu, or what he would become. The Kungur, the king of the Eldritch. Already his presence resonated backward in time and reality, an existence just as great and terrible as Azathoth herself. And unlike his wife, Ophis knew the king was aware of her. Or he would be, perhaps, Regardless of the when, she wanted him to be. She wasn't sure what was a polite greeting among any beings. Humans, devils, angels, gods, eldritch. But she hoped doing the equivalent of waving to his true form at a distance might make it easier for her to approach his human form. After all, reclaiming the dimensional gap from Great Red would be easier if she had the aid of the eldritch and their sovereigns. She wasn't sure what she could offer any of them, those gods who were all of similar or greater power than herself. But it couldn't hurt to ask. After all, she wasn't immortal. Meanwhile, wow, 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 issei exclaimed as he barely grabbed onto a tree branch sturdy enough to break his fall. It turned out that outright refusing gravity wasn't in his ballpark yet. He could hover using his eldritch powers to loosen its hold on him, which basically made it like he was walking on the moon or something, becoming very light. Light enough that he could jump extremely high into the air and fall slowly. A bit too slowly. It was taking some work right now on how loose he wanted his relationship with gravity to be. Not enough gravity, and it felt like it would take him hours to get down. But gravity turned out to have very sensitive buttons, as trying to adjust in the middle of a slow descent often resulted in him dialing it up too much and sending him to a potential intimate meeting with the ground. Ha 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 ha. Oh, that was priceless. You look like something stepped on your tail for the first time. Drake, while normally pleasant and wise, was not very helpful at this moment. Look, if you're not going to give me wings, then stay out of this. Issei snapped in annoyance, scowling at his hand. He was acutely aware of several cuts and scrapes he had from the fall, all closing and healing in a manner that normal humans would call unnatural, even compared to other magical healing abilities. I would if I could, sincerely. But doing so would genuinely require you to give up a part of yourself, and I do not believe your wife would take kindly to that arrangement, Drake remarked. What? Are you telling me I'd have to give up my dick for wings? Issei asked in surprise. What? No, of course not. Your arm would do. But the point remains, I don't think the Eldritch Queen would tolerate any damage to your person, reasons regardless, Drake pointed out. You're probably not wrong. I mean, I could probably regrow the arm after we get you a new body, but I'm kind of attached to this arm, Issei said cheekily. You don't say? Drake asked drily. Yeah, I've had it my whole life. Issei continued with a chuckle, unable to prevent himself from finishing the joke. If you're done jesting about? Issei looked up to see the stoic Yad and the amused Cass staring down at him, floating in the air flawlessly. Is jesting about even the way to say it, Yad? Issei asked in confusion. It is in some timelines, Yad answered bluntly, before looking to the side and dragging Issei's attention to the goal. Not far from here was a stone city with some kind of pyramidish-looking building looming high over the trees, a palace or temple probably. So that's it, eh? Yes, this is definitely the place, Cass said with a thoughtful frown. Such a shame. This place was rather nice. They gave me a lot of human sacrifices. Most of them were willing to. Issei decided to ignore that comment for now. His view on death and human sacrifices was very uncertain, knowing there was an afterlife. Afterlives even, from what he understood. Granted, that didn't exactly dampen his desire to keep innocent bystanders from getting mass slaughtered by anything related to the Eldritch. But his gut reaction wasn't disgust or anything overtly negative, which was probably another sign of his eroding humanity. Putting that thought away, he began jumping towards the city again, crossing the distance in 4 long leaps. He dropped from a tree branch, landing on the outskirts of the ruined city. It wasn't exactly how Issei imagined it, but then this city wasn't really ancient in terms of how long it had been abandoned. There was some overgrowth, some vines, and mold working its way out of the stonework. But by and large, it was still mainly intact. The ground was a flat, white stone of some kind, withered by wear and time, but still very much intact. The buildings were an orange or red shade that was fading more and more with the years. Some were simple houses, others were large structures of some import. There were countless symbols that Issei had no knowledge of, their written language probably. Neat place, Issei mused to himself, wondering what it looked like when it was inhabited. He looked down as Gaktha appeared on one knee, Yad and Cass floating down on either side of him. Gakt, did you clear out any zombies? No, master. There were none within the city, Gaktha answered dutifully. Issei shared a look with Cass and Yad. I don't suppose either of you did. Cass shook her head while Yad answered. My attack earlier shouldn't have reached this far. Yeah, I didn't think so, issei muttered, wondering just what their foe was up to in this abandoned metropolis. The divine trio made their way through the city, eerily quiet in its emptiness. They eventually reached the foot of the looming temple, where a great circle was carved into the floor, covered in many symbols that Issei knew were related to the human language he had seen on the wall. The lines glowed with a faint orange light that was easy to miss in the daylight. I'm just going to take a wild guess and say this is his cell? Issei opined expectantly. You'd be right, Cass said as she leaned down to touch the seal. Her scowl was sharp and telling. Let me guess, we're too late to repair it? Issei asked grimly. In a manner of speaking, Cass answered vaguely, looking to Yad, who had gone to the other side of the seal and also reached down to touch it. The time goddess found her brow furrowing. He's gone. Gone? Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. Nykrama escaped his seal some time ago, Yad answered with an annoyed tone. He merely left an overflowing mass of his own ooze behind. But if he's out, how are the people still alive? Shouldn't he have destroyed the place, turned everybody into undead so he can make them worship him? Issei asked in confusion. Yes, yes, and yes, Cass answered with a frustrated look. Someone didn't just free Nykrama, they spirited him away. What? Drake spoke up in alarm, getting many eyes to look at him in Issei's hand. Apologies, but wouldn't only an outer god be able to do so, let alone without the rest of you being aware? Drake is correct, Yad said with a sigh. Someone has been trying to obscure our ability to peer through time, hiding incidents like this. Yad, there is only a very, very exclusive few that can do that, Cass said with a frown. Well, this just got even more complicated, Issei remarked as he leaned down to touch the seal on a lark. Cass inhaled sharply. Wait, Issei, don't dash. She was cut off as a stunned Issei vanished in a glow of putrid orange light. The eldritch goddess of disease looked to Yad in disbelief. You let that happen? My sight is obscured, but not blind. The Kungur wishes to confront Nykrama himself, Yad said knowingly as she stood back up. He does not wish to rely on us for everything. Despite the royal mantle Azza has given to him, he desires to pull his own weight, as the humans put it. Azza will obliterate us if anything happens to him, Cass pointed out factually. Have some faith in our Kungur, Kasawagtha, Yad said with certainty. Besides, he will wish us to deal with the mess. Cass looked around and realized what she meant. All around the city, orange ooze began to seep from every crack and crevice of the city. They could hear and sense many things, dead things rising as Nykrama's undeath began to cover the area. Lovely. Looks like we have some cleaning to do after all. Elsewhere, Issei launched a dragon shot from his gauntlet, allowing him to burst out from a tangerine pool. He landed on one of many stone platforms dotting the surface of the liquid, surrounded by a black void with dark blue spirals that were almost impossible to see against the darkness. He grimaced in disgust as the orange ooze still clung to his form, finding the smell and feeling unpleasant. Hello, throne robber. Issei paused before turning around to see the speaker. The liquid bulged and rose up to form a worm-like being, several eyes around the head and a gaping maw. Around it were numerous, uncountable tentacles that swayed about threateningly. Issei calmly looked the being over. You must be Nykrama. I thought you left already. The maw twisted into what might be a grin or a snarl. Issei wasn't sure. Merely a lesser avatar, made of my own essence. I could not deny the chance for us to meet. Issei raised an eyebrow. Meaning you knew I'd be here, he commented, getting no response. Listen, I get your myth that you weren't the one Azza loved, but I'm going to be nice and give you a chance. A chance? Nykrama growled out in disbelief. Yeah, you cut off from whoever or whatever freed you. Agree not to try turning Earth into your undead cult, and I'll negotiate with Azza and the others about the terms of your release, Issei offered calmly. Nykrama stared for a long moment. I don't know if I find your offer insulting or baffling. What kind of king barters with his subjects? A king that isn't full of shit, Issei answered honestly. Is that a no? The beastly form rose higher and higher. Of course I refuse. I refuse your offer, and I refuse to accept that a whelp like you is supposed to be worthy of that throne, of being the sultan of the sultana. I deny you, and I will erase you. Then when I have laid you low, she will see that it was I who was meant to rule the cosmos at her side. And I will claim her above your rotting corpse and dash. The avatar got no further, as a dragon shot tore through his form's head. The only one who gets to talk about doing naughty stuff to Oz's body is me, Issei said pointedly, his eyes darkening menacingly at this worm that dared to speak such things of his Ozza. Nikrima growled and gurgled as his avatar reformed. Very well, false king. Come and meet your demise, he declared before lurching forth, like a mighty serpent and a grave wave in one. Meanwhile, Ozza blinked before giggling to herself as she lay on the bed. I think Issei just got possessive of me, she said, looking over her shoulder as she felt Issei's presence across space and time. She purred as if already in his embrace. Hurry back, beloved. I grow impatient for your touch. The Sultana is going to flame me for this. Gaktha delivered the comment in such a deadpan manner that a human might have thought she was being sarcastic or exaggerating. The Eldritch goddesses knew she was not. No, she won't, Yad assured, casually cutting down zombies as easily as she walked. Unless you are a masochist, but you'd need to speak to your master on that. Gaktha hummed, moving with the grace of a shade and a broken doll all at once as she ended the undead limb from limb with her own limbs. Yes, you were keeping watch, Cass agreed with a sigh, zombies dissolving around her as a living purple mist emitted from her hair to attack them. We were the ones that let Nikrima drag the Kungur into the seal. Gaktha said nothing as they continued the battle, or rather, the pest control session. Don't worry so much. Issei likes you and he'll only ever hurt a woman who enjoys pain, Yad remarked. Why do you have a masochist fixation right now? Cass inquired in confusion. I don't know, and I'm annoyed to say I'll probably enjoy finding out, Yad remarked mysteriously. Is Master what mortals would call a sadist? Gaktha inquired. I'm less clear on the line between someone who is sadistic and dominant, Cass admitted. A sadist doesn't care how the other part feels. Besides pain, a dominant does, Yad answered, eyebrow twitching. Yag is reading something, and I have the urge to blame that Aquino. Ah, yes, that one, Cass said with a smile. Ozza is rather fond of her. Master is more than merely fond of her, and her orifices. Meanwhile, Issei found himself in a rather sticky situation. He grunted, no, growled as his skin burned along his arms and torso. Nikrima's ooze couldn't turn him into a zombie, but it did try to rot through his flesh. Somewhere in the back of Issei's mind, he knew he should be in agony, that a human would go into shock from this kind of injury. But, unfortunately for Nikrima, he was far from human anymore. His flesh stitched back together, with red scale-like protrusions forming where the wounds had been. Be careful. I'm not sure how human that form will be if you damage it too far, Drake warned from the gauntlet as Issei landed on one of the various island platforms in this sea of oozing undeath. And that really should be a concern for Issei. He knew it should be. But the ire of the Kungur was not so easily put aside. What's the matter, pretender? Is this already too much for you? Nikrima's avatar taunted as he circled Issei like a serpent. Issei just stared at him, through him, and beyond him. Nikrima stiffened as he felt that stare from beyond time and space, somehow reaching his true form across the impossible distance. You dare to glare at a true god? To openly show your ire to your sovereign? You pathetic upstart, I'll dash. A dragon shot ripped through the entire form. Issei hummed, and it sounded like a terrible growl, fleshy spikes and scales growing out of his right arm and the right side of his face. He stalked over to the edge of the ooze. Nikrima's avatar reformed again, looking down at him mockingly. What do you plan to do, pretender? You, more mortal than eldritch, couldn't destroy so much of my essence so easily. Issei ignored him as he got on one knee and raised up his red gauntlet. Oh, coming to swear your loyalty, beg for me dash. Issei put his hand into the ooze, the green gem shining brightly. Boost, boost, boost. Drake's voice could be heard echoing from the sacred gear over and over again. Nikrima froze, feeling something was wrong, something was different. What did you do to? He boosted your connection to this avatar, Drake answered as Issei rose, eyes shadowed by his hair. TCH. A heavenly dragon, cut down by the flocks of the divine and the damned, bound by their terrestrial god, Nikrima mocked. So what? Has the so-called Kungur grown senseless and made my form even strong dash? Issei swung his hand wide. Nikrima stopped and gritted his teeth in pain. What just? He looked around, first with his real form elsewhere, and then with his avatar. Then he saw it. One of his avatar's tentacles had been severed, but he felt it as if it was a real wound. Oh, I didn't make you stronger, Issei remarked with a cold smile. I just made it so that you feel everything that happens to this slime puppet of yours. Nikrima's eyes widened. That isn't possible, surely. Not for one like HHH. Nikrima screamed in pain as Issei shot his head off again, making the mass of ooze wither in agony. He's not accustomed to pain, I imagine, Draig remarked. Then let's give him a crash course, Issei said with a toothy smirk as Nikrima rose up again, far more weary and reluctant now. Elsewhere, Azza shivered. I didn't think you'd be interested in this type of thing, Azza, Akino teased as they looked over a rather impure magazine. Oh, I'm not into femdom, but I do like the outfits, so tight and shiny, Azza answered casually. Oh, you can definitely be the one getting dominated in those outfits, Akino said with a giggle before looking curious. Though, that raises a question on my part. You told me that you've been following Issei's reincarnation since before humanity. Yes, that's right, Azza confirmed with a nod. Were any of them a woman? Akino asked playfully. Not exactly, Azza answered honestly, making Akino blink. Most souls will stay the same sex through different lifetimes, assuming their species has them. But two. No, 3 of Issei's past lives were turned into female forms for a time via magic or curses. Huh. I guess after a long enough time, anything happens once, Akino mused. So, what were you shivering so pleasantly about? Did Issei do something to tease you across space and time? Yes, he's future flashing me, Azza remarked, glaring over her shoulder with a pout. Future flashing? Akino asked with a raised eyebrow, very interested in what that meant. He is not future flashing you, Yog said as she emerged from the dressing room, wearing an open black hoodie, a white shirt with an infinity sign, thigh-high legging, a modest skirt, a black choker, and her hair in a ponytail. You do realize I'm probably never going to wear this, right? We'll see. I'm just happy you honored the bet, Akino said with a smile. Besides, you need a casual look instead of looking like a ship captain. Humans literally perceive me as just a normal girl with normal clothes. What's the point? Yog asked with a sigh. It's your fault for taking a bet. And Akino did get you to blush fair and square, Azza teased her. Allowing you two to meet may have been a mistake, Yog remarked with a deadpan expression as she leaned on the wall. As for the future flashing, Issei is helping himself. Akino blinked. I mean, I can see why Azza would be upset. Him using his hand, when she obviously would be more than happy to help with that. Not like that, Azza said with a sigh. Issei's future selves are helping his current self a little in a fight. Akino starred. Is that safe? For him? Or the planet? Oh, yeah, it's perfectly fine. They're just giving him nudges and hints, not actually emerging. Even they can't do that, Yog explained. Azza hummed knowingly to herself while glancing away, getting a narrowed look from Yog. Akino cupped her chin. Not to get too philosophical, but doesn't this mean that time is fixed? That the future is already decided? Not at all, Yog answered. What happens is up in the air, but Issei existing in his greater forms. That's set in stone. And it's also set in stone that they would know things that he wouldn't yet, regardless of events. I see. So it's because Issei is, well, inevitable in a sense, Akino accepted thoughtfully. So, why does this bother you, Azza? Do you know how hard it is to not take a sneak peek at how magnificent my beloved will become? Azza asked in frustration, looking ready to tear her hair out. Akino was surprised she didn't, as the hair now looked to be alive and turning into crab pinchers. I don't want spoilers, I want the surprise. And I want to enjoy Issei as he is. But his future selves are just around the corner of my perception, and it's hard not to look. Akino tilted her head and looked at Yog. Would I even survive Dash? Mating with Issei in a higher state? Eventually, yes. Granted, you might be a bit remolded by the time he's done with you, in more ways than one, Yog said with a smirk. Now I'm getting excited for future Issei, Akino said with a giggle. Azza pouted to herself, clearly frustrated with her situation, even as her hair snapped away to demonstrate her mood. Meanwhile, Cass descended into the prison realm, her nose wrinkling at the smell, diseased boils spreading angrily across her face and neck, before subsiding as she took a deep breath. "Issei? Kungur? Yat said you're done? Where are you?" she called out, her voice echoing impossibly as she looked across the realm of orange ooze and stone platforms. No answer came, but she did hear something, the sound of distant thudding. She flew across the area, seeing where the platforms had been partially or utterly destroyed by the battle. She eventually found Issei. He was sitting on a platform, his arm above his sacred gear covered in spikes and scales. The king of the Eldritch was staring down at a corpse that was a smaller replica of Nykrama's form made from his ooze, the entity stabbed with many of the king's spear-like spikes. She descended down and only now heard the king snarling to himself as he drove his foot into the head of the immobile avatar, which did not lose form. No, could not lose form, Cass realized. You stabilized his avatar in this size with your spikes. Impressive, Cass remarked, looking down at Nykrama. The tentacles had long been ripped from his smaller form, and he remained paralyzed, but she could sense he was still connected to this form, and could still feel everything. Issei looked at her, and Cass could feel the stare of the future king of the Eldritch weighing on her. "Are you finished with him, Kungur? May I end this farce for you?" Cass offered, unbothered by his stare. After all, she wasn't his enemy. Without looking away, he brought his foot back and kicked Nykrama's worm-like form into the ooze, nodding to Cass. The Eldritch of Disease walked to the edge and could feel the pained stare of Nykrama through the ooze. She cut her finger with her thumb, holding it out to let a single drop of sluggish violet blood fall. Nykrama, the very ooze, gave a blood-curdling scream as the droplet spread like a weed of lightning bolts, quickly engulfing the realm and robbing the ooze of its bright hue to be replaced with the shade of Cass's blood. As the scream ended and the realm grew dark, Cass smiled and turned to him. "Well, we should leave. This realm will collapse soon, I imagine." Issei didn't answer, groaning and holding his head as the eldritch protrusions began to fall from his body, adrenaline and battle haze draining from his body. Cass rushed to grab him as he nearly fell backwards. "Kungur, are you all right?" she asked in concern. Issei took a deep breath. "I just tortured that asshole," Issei remarked with a far-off expression. "I could have killed him and been done with it myself. Let him cut the connection. But after all the shit he kept saying about taking Aza, I wanted to drive the message home." "And that bothers you?" Cass asked curiously. "A bit? Or, well, I'm bothered by how little it bothers me," Issei said thoughtfully. "I mean, I knew the prick was deluded as hell. I know Aza wouldn't leave me. So why the hell did I let it get to me? Aza would be offended by the idea of her being in love with anyone besides you. It is an affront to her very nature by her own words," Cass assured. "She would have done far worse to him." "I know. Fuck, Cass, I'm still human, okay? Killing people I can get over, but torturing somebody is a bit much for me still," he said with a sigh. "I've been spending a lot of time doing king stuff. Maybe I should take a break and just pretend to be normal for a week." "Yes, a normal person at your age and in your situation would normally be married to someone like Aza," Cass remarked with a giggle. "Don't mock me." Issei waved off but smiled all the same. "Cass, the Eldritch don't care about mortals beyond their own worshippers usually, right?" "That is typical, yes, if they have any to begin with." "Some do, though," Cass answered, wondering where this was going. "So, the only reason why a lot of Eldritch will ever care is because I care and they don't want to offend me, right?" "I wouldn't say that," Cass said with a hum. "If you wanted to live a lifetime or two normally, just by yourself with Aza, she would keep us all away for the time of your stay on Earth. And most of us wouldn't have cared. We don't care. But it is important to many of us that, even if we don't care, others do. You and Shub are just a few who care about mortals even when they don't worship you. And many of us try to respect that other Eldritch like you care. After all, we have eternity together. It wouldn't make sense to be at odds with someone you will know eternally if it's over something you largely don't care about." "Huh," Issei said, looking up. "I guess that makes sense. And yeah, living a normal life? No, I've been enjoying meeting everyone too much for something that boring." "What brought this on?" Cass asked curiously. "Something about your future selves bothering you?" Fuck, that is still weird to think about, Issei said with a head shake. Not really. Just the idea of it all, knowing Nikrama's backstory and all. Me steadily losing my humanity over time, and I just sometimes worry how I'll turn out, who I'll be by the end of it. Would I even like the asshole I'll be in a few eons? Or would he despise me for being the part of him that was more human? Cass smiled reassuringly. Trust me, you'd know if your future selves resented ever being you. It's hard to keep that to yourself. Imagine keeping it from yourself. Fair, Issei said with a chuckle. Guess I'm still human enough to worry about nothing. No, Eldritch do that too, Cass said with a giggle as she held out her hand to him. Come, let's leave this place. Right. Thanks for the pep talk, Issei said as he took the hand and stood up. Kungur or not, you're the reason my precious daughters aren't imprisoned, Cass said with a smile before lifting her hand and snapping her fingers. Issei briefly saw them turn into tentacles as both Cass and himself were overcome with a bright white light. There was the sound of something shattering as the brightness faded, and they were suddenly back in the ruined city. Issei looked around and was amused to see Gaktha sitting on a pile of corpses. Welcome back, master, she answered in the usual dead voice of her human form. Yad stood nearby, giving the servant a very plain look as she addressed Issei. She wanted to show you how many she killed while you were gone. That's actually a lot. I imagine you two took out a lot too, so thanks for taking care of that, ladies, Issei said with a nod. Gaktha's expression didn't change, but she held her head a bit higher. Yad wordlessly held out her hand and turned the corpses into ash with her temporal powers. Gaktha's expression didn't change as she fell from what she sat, landing on her feet without effort. So, Cass, that thing you did in the prison? That means the ooze is going to stop turning people into zombies, right? Issei asked curiously. Yes, indeed, Kungur, Cass assured. Issei looked to Yad. Is that going to have any side effects on this place? He asked curiously. Yad glanced up in consideration of the timeline. Yes, it will slowly mutate the natives over many generations. They will not mind the changes. Well, I guess that's... Wait, will they even have the mind or sanity to care? Issei asked suspiciously. They will still be sapient and similar to humans in mentality, Yad answered with a sigh. I would not lead you astray with half-truths, Kungur, nor am I one to overlook such a detail when it comes to your desire. Sorry, but it's kinda a fair question with us Eldritch, Issei remarked with a weak smile. Yad didn't refute that. Do you wish to return to Japan now, Kungur? First, I want to go let Bats and his people know this problem was taken care of, Issei answered. So you're sure that girl isn't going to be sacrificed in my name or anything? Issei asked in concern as they prepared to use the portal and return to Japan. It won't be unwilling if she is, Yad remarked in her own form of assurance. That's about the best I can get at the moment, isn't it? Issei said with a sigh. She'll most likely just become a priestess in your honor, Cass assured in amusement. They'd only sacrifice her if they were desperate for your help. Hopefully I know before it gets that bad, Issei murmured as they headed through the portal. I don't foresee that becoming an issue, Yad remarked before nodding forward. Also, Kungur. Issei looked forward and saw that Irina and Zenovia were in hand, Lag having shed his human skin to take on his true form as a rider of doom. In front of the trio was a group of fish people, or rather, two groups, each of distinctly different kinds of amphibious humanoids. Members of one group were forced onto their knees and in bonds, looking like a weird halfway point between human and fish, with webbed hands and a fin down their necklace heads. The second group had heads like octopuses, making Issei think of Cthulhu. They stood over the first group, binding them as prisoners, while covered in light armor and tridents. There were about 24 of them in total, gathered in the former campsite with a third lying dead on the ground. What did we miss? Issei asked curiously. These scaly monsters were trying to kidnap us and force us to have their children, Irina answered in alarm. But the tentacle ones are apparently on our side, Zenovia said with some skepticism, neither of them lowering their guard. Issei turned to look at the amphibians who chartered frantically among themselves as they all suddenly got on their knees and bowed to him. Even the captives bowed and dared not to risk his anger. I warned the deep ones we were in your service, but they paid no heed, Lag remarked, eyes glowing ominously. Shall I end them, Kungur? Maybe, Issei said with a frown as he walked over to the group of kneeling Eldritch. All right, Which of you is in charge? One of the tentacled beings stood up and approached. Great Sovereign, forgive us for disturbing you and your companions, he said in a deep, slow voice from behind his tentacles. I am Thatlex. We are a band of Thulhi bounty hunters, sent to apprehend these deep ones, who have gone rogue to kidnap mortal maidens to make them breed with them. The deep ones groaned and hissed in their own weird tongue at that. That really doesn't help your case, even if you sacrificed the most beautiful one to me, Issei said in annoyance as he glared down at the speaker. The deep ones froze and bowed their heads in terror and fear. Shall we execute them here and now, O center of the center? Thatlex asked, his soldiers looking eager to spill blood if Issei gave the word. Handle them however you normally would, Issei remarked, waving them off. Thank you for taking care of this. It is our job, but I am grateful to know you approve, Thatlex answered humbly, bowing his tentacled head deeply. He let out a savage noise, and he turned to his men and waved for them to move out, forcing their captives along. Knowing the judgment of the Kungur himself was against them, the deep ones made no effort to resist or forestall their fates. Well, it looks like we all had an eventful night, Issei said as he approached Irina and the others. You two okay? With respect, don't assume we're soft and weak, Zenobia said neutrally as she finally lowered her sword. I mean mentally. You know, eldritch-induced insanity and all that. Issei retorted. We're fine, Irina assured with a smile. I don't think those Roldritch were strong enough to affect people involved in the supernatural world. I wouldn't know. I'm just flat-out immune to it for obvious reasons, Issei remarked with a shrug. I assume the zombies are taken care of? Zenobia asked curiously. Yeah, it turns out it all started with a mad scientist experimenting with eldritch zombie goo. Get this, he was Polish. Issei explained. Polish? Really? In South America? Irina asked in surprise. This feels like one of those American movies with the archaeologist. The one with the whip. Jones, I think, Issei said thoughtfully. Anyway, we dealt with him. The god responsible for the zombies already escaped, but he won't be coming back there. Our Kungur taught him a very painful lesson, and I gave him some after-hours tutoring, Cass said with a dark smile. Does that joke work? Not really, but good effort. Issei offered with a SOSO gesture of the hand. When you say escaped, do you mean it is somewhere loose on Earth? Zenobia asked with a frown. No, Nikrama escaped to somewhere far from this world for now. If he returns, it will likely be in a foolish attempt to defeat the Kungur, Yad said evenly. Yeah, turns out this guy thought he was the one that Azza was in love with, so he kind of hates me because he's not, Issei explained, scratching the back of his head. So he's some kind of creepy eldritch stalker and admirer of the eldritch queen? Irina summarized in bewilderment. Yes, that is an excellent way to describe him, Cass agreed eagerly. Now that this situation is resolved, there is the matter of these two seeking an audience with you, Kungur, Yad reminded, looking directly at the church duo. Right, almost forgot about that, Issei mused, looking up at the night sky. Given all the bullshit that just happened, you ladies mind putting this off until morning? That is agreeable to us, King of the Eldritch, Zenobia accepted coolly. Great. Now, I heard you two got lost trying to find me, so, do you have a place to stay? Issei asked curiously. The pair shared sheepish looks with one another. Issei turned to his vizier. Yad, they're one of those apartments or safe houses they can spend the night in? There is a hidden cabin in these very woods, Yad informed, glancing at the church warriors. Follow me, servants of the slain god. They hesitated. I swear on the Kungur's name that I have nothing nefarious planned for either of you. If they did, you'd already be dead, Lag remarked, having returned to his form of a human and a motorcycle. It wasn't the best reassurance, but they both followed after Yad, Irina smiling and waving at Issei. It was good to see you again, Issei. I hope we can catch up soon. Same to you, Irina, Issei said with a smile, waiting until they were gone some distance to address Cass. How binding is it to swear on my name? As binding as you desire it to be at any given time, Cass answered casually. Right. Well, thanks for minding the home front, Lag, Issei said as he turned to the Eldritch of Doom. Take the rest of the night off, find something fun to do. Bold of you to assume I can keep my lower half from munching on anything long enough to have fun, Lag said, slapping the top of the motorcycle in mild annoyance. The motorcycle revved itself with indignation. Oh, don't start that with me again. With that, the Eldritch of Doom rode off into the night. Issei let out a heavy sigh and let his shoulders sag. Something wrong, Kungur? Cass asked curiously. Right now, I'd love to just go home and fuck Azza until we both pass out, Issei admitted with a headshake. But I need to talk to Yad about whoever the hell busted Nikrama out, and maybe this deep one thing. Sire, you're eternal. And so are most of the beings you're worried about. You have time, Cass reminded encouragingly. Go home, be with your beloved, deal with those church girls in the morning, and worry about everything else a little later. Issei rubbed his forehead. I might miss some things when I grow out of my humanity. Maybe a lot of things. But my need for sleep? I can't wait to be rid of that. Oh, don't be so sure. Sleep can be very pleasant even when it's not needed, Cass mused absently. Besides, if you didn't sleep, Azza couldn't have fun with you in your dreams. Or you in hers. Point, Issei said with a smile. Hey, Cass, you want to borrow the twins and give them a day off in a few days? Cass stood a bit straighter as her eyes shimmered. I couldn't be more grateful for anything else, my Kungur. Later, Issei finally returned home and found Azza waiting for him, sitting upside down on his bed. Beloved, you're back. Did you have a fun time in the Americas? Issei rolled his shoulder and rubbed it. I'm not sure fun is the word. I met your stalker, fanboy, or whatever we want to call the zombie slug. Asshole has no pain tolerance, I swear, he said, pausing as he pulled a small spike out of his shoulder and tossed it in the trash. Oh, are you thorny for me, Issei? Azza asked playfully. Issei snorted hard in amusement. Babe, you're horrible. But for you? Always, Issei said as sat down next to her. Damn it, he exclaimed, leaning back with a groan. What's wrong? Azza asked, turning over to crawl up between his legs as innocently as possible. Nothing, it just dawned on me. When did I become so damn responsible? I have a hot, horny girl literally in my bed, and I spend a lot more time handing kingly shit than I do in said bed with said horny girl. To be fair, I'm only horny when I'm with you or thinking about you, Azza remarked nonchalantly. Issei gave her a blank look, knowing exactly how often she thought about him. And honestly, you've always been responsible. When you actually have responsibilities, I mean, Azza said before frowning. I'm sorry though, I never meant to put unwanted work on you. No, it's fine. From what I can tell, this would normally be a less busy job, but us getting married kind of got everyone moving and acting up, Issei said with a head shake. I think I just need a break soon. So we can just be Azza and Issei for a couple days. Live, love, and fuck each other silly. I'd like that a lot, Azza said with a smile before looking concerned. Why do you say it like that? Say what? He asked curiously. You paused when you said we were married, and you said it weirdly. Why? She questioned with a head tilt. Issei scratched his cheek as he decided how to answer that. It's just a human thing. Even a shotgun wedding has some kind of ceremony. I know everyone already considers us a married couple, but my head is still human enough to think we need to have some kind of wedding or something to make it official. Azza said in understanding, resting her chin on his chest. Eldritch usually don't have weddings. Our cultists do, but us? The Eldritch pair might put on some great or terrible display as a symbol of their love and bond, but nothing like a wedding. Well, I guess we'll have the first wedding of the Eldritch gods, one day, Issei said with a chuckle as he stroked her hair. Azza hummed pleasantly, her hair moving on its own to pull around his hand softly. There's something you want to talk about, isn't there? Something important? Yeah, but I think it can wait until morning. I'm definitely not getting a break tomorrow, Issei said with a chuckle. So, how'd your night go? Well, earlier, I had a talk with Asia. I've been apparently giving her nightmares by accident, the poor dear. I already fixed that, and we had some fun at a beach, Azza mused before giggling. Me and Akino made Yag go try on new outfits after she lost a bet. Yag lost a bet? Issei asked with a raised eyebrow. And she didn't just rewind it? Nope. I don't think it would have helped, Azza said with a giggle. Issei gave her a curious look. The bet was if Akino could make her blush, Azza explained simply. Issei nodded in understanding and agreement. Yeah, I could see that. Akino is Akino. Yes, she is, Azza said fondly. I kind of see the appeal of the shopping thing. Oh, and your future selves are teasing me. You will know that I really don't want to ruin the surprise, but it's hard when you're going to be future flashing me like you're going to be doing earlier. Issei looked thoughtful. No, I followed all of that. I'd say I'll be sorry, but I probably won't be. You're cute when you pout. Oz's eyes widened in wonder, practically sparkling like stars. Actually, Issei was pretty sure several new stars had just been created somewhere. You think I'm cute when I'm frustrated? Yes. Finally, something good came of my frustrations besides venting sex and gnarly. Issei glanced up as he almost heard a laugh. Almost. He knew he was going to have to meet with this stepdaughter of his one day in the near future. He knew. But like Cass said, he had time, and the rest of tonight was just going to be for him and Aza. So, do you want to tell me more about your zombie hunting adventures? Or, she paused and started drawing circles on his shirt. Me destroying this bed? Oh, I don't know. I might feel like destroying the wall this time. Issei remarked wryly as his hands circled around her. Meanwhile, sweet, aren't they? Yad looked to Yog, her outer self all too amused. You lost a bet to a mortal, Yad said in observation. Remind me again, why did we allow her and Aza to meet? Yog asked with a sigh. You presumed the Kungur would allow us to interfere with the Queen's most successful attempt at socializing with mortals, Yad remarked. You lost a bet, and it involved masochism. Aquino may have painted a few scenarios that our mind went away with, Yog said with a sigh. I blame our parents for this. Yad hummed, declining to comment on that. Nikrama is being forced to watch the Kungur and Aza coupling. Is that our doing? Oh no, that's entirely Cass. She really wants to try and get it through his skull after that thrashing Issei gave him, Yog answered with a chuckle. Are you enjoying being the advisor? I am, Yad admitted, looking at the slightly haggard appearance of her other self. You are not enjoying my role. I'm not used to being the smaller spoon between us. Yog paused and looked thoughtful. That came out wrong. Aquino is still in my head. Ironic for an eldritch god, Yad remarked with a hint of a smile. Issei does appreciate your company. Yog raised an eyebrow. He merely appreciates my straightforwardness at the moment, given how much he feels he must handle currently, Yad explained. I'm aware. That was almost entirely why we switched, Yog must, looking off to the side. I've been keeping an eye on Shub and Iggy. Yad inhaled sharply. I have no memory of this. We both have things we like to share with ourselves through words instead of memories. Yog remained with a chuckle. They seem happy right now. She's found one of her most stable cults to help keep an eye on him from time to time. I'm glad, Yad said with a nod. You know who has to be behind Nikrama's escape. Of course I do. I am you after all, Yog remarked with an eye roll. That one has come gnawing and gnashing again. Yad shook her head. I fear that all that has been gained from this will be that dreaded sight. When the patience of the Queen runs dry, even we cannot foresee how much the cosmos will bleed for it, Yog said with a frown. Only the mercy of the king can stay her hand if it all comes to that. All right. So, what did you both want to see me about? Issei asked curiously. He and the church duo sat in a cabin that Yad had brought them to last night. It was a rather cozy setting, even if it felt a little out of place somehow. Irina scratched her head nervously. Well, right, yeah, stupid question, Issei acknowledged. Is this anything to do with the church being afraid that the Eldritch are going to end the world or something like that? And turn the entire human race into slave cultists or breeding vessels for various horrors, and any other terrible fate one associates with the Eldritch, Zenobia answered bluntly. Zenobia, Irina said, her tone lightly scolding. Yeah, I'm going to be having this conversation a lot, I'm sure, Issei said with a sigh. No, the Eldritch as a faction are not planning to take over or destroy the Earth, and I've made it a general policy to try to keep those getting stirred up from doing too much damage. Policy, Zenobia repeated slowly. That's another thing. We've heard that you are apparently dubbed by them as the King of the Eldritch, or rather, King of the Eldritch Gods. Irina remarked. I'm sure that's not winning me any friends around most faiths, Issei said with a head shake. We mainly wanted to clarify what that means and how that happened. Zenobia pressed on with a frown. Why would the Eldritch call a mortal, former or not, their monarch? Because I am, Issei answered as he leaned back. Long story short, Aza has been in love with me for about 1,000 different literal lifetimes. This lifetime is when I finally decided to hook up with her, and she made it so that I'm turning into an Eldritch god. Lifetimes. Wait, so, are you a god or not right now? Irina asked in confusion. Technically, I am one, as weird as that is to think about. I'm just not that strong yet. It's a slow thing, growing into all that power, Issei answered. But I'm already eldritch. And yet they treat you like their king? I thought it was a boastful title or symbolic of your marriage to the demon Sultana, but I saw clearly that the eldritch fear and obey you. Even their mightier gods give heed to you, Zenobia remarked skeptically. Things are different for the eldritch. I'm going to live forever, and so are they. I'm going to be an outer god one day that will be stronger than most of them. And I have Azza regardless. They don't see treating me as their king now as any different than in thousands or millions of years from now. Issei waved off. Or, as some of them put it, they don't see the point in pissing me off when they have to spend eternity with me, and I'm going to be their superior. I see. And what are your plans as king, Issei? Irina asked curiously. Right now, I'm just dealing with things as they develop. Issei answered with a shrug. That's it. Zenobia asked with a raised eyebrow. Azza is hands-off, as you might know, Issei pointed out. While a lot of things are happening because of us getting hitched, most of the eldritch gods are only reacting so quickly because of me. Otherwise, well, a lot of these things would have gotten worse before they were dealt with. Zenobia hummed to herself. Irina decided to take the lead here. But enough about that. So, I have to ask, what is the queen like? She must have been quite something to grab your attention, even in human form. Issei chuckled and leaned back in thought. It's funny, really. She showed up one day and just asked me out. Some cute girl I didn't know told me she was my secret admirer. Which was true, I guess, but I couldn't believe my luck at the time. Then some fallen angels tried to kill me after our date. Wait, fallen angels? How did they get involved? Irina asked in confusion. Did they think she was some lower-tier eldritch or something? Oh, they had no idea she wasn't even human. No, I have a sacred gear and they wanted to kill me before it awakened, Issei explained. You're a fledgling eldritch god with a sacred gear? Zenobia asked in surprise. Which one? Issei wordlessly held up his hand and made the gauntlet appear. Is that the gauntlet of the Red Dragon Emperor, one of the two heavenly dragons? Irina whispered out in disbelief. Indeed, Drake answered, making the church duo jump in their seats. Greetings, I am the Welsh dragon Drake. One of the two dragons whose fighting made the three factions unite to put them down, Zenobia said in shock. Indeed. And if I may put in my own 2 cents about this discussion, Drake started. It would be wise for you and the church to pay heed to the young Kungur. He is remarkably unambitious. Hey, Issei glared at the gauntlet. He has most of the eldritch faction all willing, some even eager to obey his command. He has the demon Sultana, who would gladly lay entire worlds at his feet. And all this one wants to do is spend time with his wife and build his harem. He would much rather everyone live in peace than conquer those unwilling to be subjugated. Who wants to be willingly subjugated? Irina asked in confusion. You would be surprised, Issei said evasively. But yeah, what Drake said. I still find the idea of people worshipping me weird. Not going to stop them, obviously, but I'm not interested in them doing some kind of mass conversion or anything like that. He did say harem, right? The queen doesn't mind you having a harem? Irina asked in surprise. Please, she's practically helping him build it sometimes, Drake said with a snort. Issei didn't deny that, grinning fondly to himself. You have the queen of the eldritch and you still desire other women? Zenobia asked with a raised eyebrow. You truly are a lustful one. Yep, Issei admitted without reservation or hesitation. That's still Issei, Irina said in amusement. I believe him. Zenobia looked at Irina for a moment before addressing Issei again. Be that as it may, there have been several eldritch incidents around the globe. You do realize that with how limbs off Azza is, the eldritch faction is very loosely aligned in most regards, right? Issei pointed out. We try to deal with them, but there are always going to be some that are just doing their own thing. We deal with them as best we can when we become aware of them. As you can? Irina asked. Isn't your wife basically all-powerful? She is, but if you had her try to solve everything, the entire planet would die. At best, Issei reminded. You really don't like us that much, do you, Zenobia? While we consider eldritch cultists heathen and their worship blasphemous, God and the church tolerate their existence, knowing that any successful, Conflict with you can only result in the end of days, Zenobia answered pointedly. God. Issei raised an eyebrow at that. It dawned on him that Zenobia and Irina, like most, had no idea that the God of the Bible was dead. Well, it wasn't like him telling them would go over well, so he decided to keep a lid on it. That's a shame. I'm hoping we can be friends. Friends or something else? Irina asked sheepishly. Issei blinked, twice. I mean, that's sudden, but I wouldn't really say no. Oh, I see what's going on here, Drake interrupted with a hearty chuckle. Did the church send you two here to offer yourselves as sacrifices to appease him if all else failed? Their silence was very telling. Seriously? Issei said, wiping a hand over his face with a groan. Look, not that I wouldn't be interested, because you are both really hot. Irina blushed a bit, while Zenobia hummed thoughtfully at that. But that's really not necessary, Issei assured. The only sacrifice I've accepted is Asia, and that was a specific situation. Asia Argento, right? The heathen nun? Zenobia asked with a scowl. Issei scowled, and the temperature might have dropped. Right. That little angel got kicked out by your bosses for healing a devil, didn't she? We don't expect you to understand this, but devils are our enemies. Healing one of their kind is practically blasphemy against God, Zenobia remarked coldly. Tread lightly, warrior of the Vatican, Drake cautioned pointedly. His patience is not limitless, and he could shatter you with a word. Irina looked to the frowning Issei in worry, who never took his eyes off Zenobia. I'm not that kind of petty asshole. Leave Asia alone, and we'll just not touch that issue, he said firmly. Zenobia nodded. Thank you. And I apologize, she glanced to the side. I'm not exactly a great diplomat. I was mainly set dash. Because you're hot. Issei guessed. Issei, Irina said with a sigh of exasperation. That, and I wield a holy sword, which would help me defend Irina and myself from any enemies we might run into, Zenobia explained. Not a bad idea. The supernatural world seems to be everywhere once you know about it, Issei mused. Look, I made peace with the fallen angels. I cleared things up with the devil, and I see no reason not to be on good terms with the Vatican too. Honestly, the only thing I'm remotely happy about this scare I gave everyone is that it seems like all the factions being more worried about the Eldritch is keeping the peace between everyone else. You're not wrong, Irina acknowledged. I've heard that things have gotten very quiet on all other fronts. True, there are more incidents with the Eldritch, but I don't think any of the exorcists or others have fought with devils, fallens, yokai, vampires, or anyone else for a while now. Oi, I like that. But it almost sounds like everyone is uniting against the Eldritch, Issei said with a sigh. We are. It's just that even the Eldritch are uniting with us against the Eldritch, Zenobia said with a hint of a smile. I'm not sure what to think of you, king of the outer pantheon, a human who has given up his humanity to join their ranks. But Irina seems to trust you, and so I shall trust her judgment. Also, I freely admit, you could have killed or warped our minds by now if you wanted to. I hear you have the Dream Witch on a leash. A leash? Issei repeated in surprise. Oh, no, she just wears chains as part of her clothes. It's kind of hot, but no leash. Really? Irina said, looking thoughtful. I guess that information about the Queen giving him the Dream Witch as a pet must have been wrong. Where did you hear that exactly? Issei asked, very curious. They shared a look before Zenobia answered. The Vatican keeps track of certain Eldritch cults, the ones that tend to have the most information. I believe that is, well, a myth they have made up for you. Yeah, that makes sense. On one hand, I want to put off having an official cult, but at the same time, I'd rather not have them saying that stuff about Yid and the others, Issei mused before glancing up. Then again, I'm sure I'll have a few embarrassing myths made up about me. I have to ask, isn't it strange to be on such casual terms with all these gods? Irina asked in interest. Oh, you have no idea, Issei said, putting a hand over his face as he gave out a laugh. And that's ignoring the politics and family drama that comes with being a part of this group, let alone the new head of the household. Aren't all of Eldritch politics just family drama? Zenobia asked with a furrowed brow. It is a very convoluted family, Drake agreed. Don't act like you didn't nearly piss yourself the first time you met Shub, Issei taunted with a smile. Can you not spare me an ounce of dignity? Drake protested in annoyance. Zenobia hummed to herself. This certainly wasn't what she expected, but it didn't seem to be exactly bad news. So, if the Vatican were to keep agents in the area of Kuo to inform and inquire to you about certain eldritch events? Issei just gave her a lazy thumbs up in response. Just like that. Irina asked, surprised but amused. Just like that. The hell? Zenobia yelled as she and Irina jumped from the couch, pulling out their weapons. Or, they would have, if Yog hadn't pointed out 2 fingers in a V shape, each digit extending into a twisting limb of glowing yellowish light that shot out to stop the weapons from appearing in mid-manifestation. Put those things away and keep it down, Yog said with a yawn and bags under her eyes, flexing her mutated fingers and pushing the weapons back into non-existence. Issei, is she friendly? Irina asked in alarm. Yog, what the heck happened to you? Issei asked in concern. You look like you got hung over after an all-nighter. Kind of feels like that, Yog admitted with a yawn, her fingers returning to normal as she used the hilt of her sword to rub her eyes. Taking over for Yad is like going from big-picture CEO to office grunt working on the nitty-gritty all night. Not exactly getting a lot of sympathy from me. That just makes it sound like Yad needed this switch up, Issei mused. She likes the nitty-gritty. She's just enjoying spending time with you. Yog countered, practically pouting. Wait, Yog as in? Zenobia said slowly. Outer goddess that is technically time herself? Yes, Issei explained casually. Seriously, is this about you and Yad switching, or are you just having some kind of detox from not rewinding things as often? Kungur, please don't spread my shame, Yog said flatly. It's fine, you can warp it so they don't remember, Issei assured with a sigh. They both became alarmed at that. Wait, what do you dash? Iangu. Wait, Yog as in? Zenobia said slowly. Outer goddess that is technically time herself? Yes, Issei explained casually, again, trying not to roll his eyes. So this is what this feels like, he muttered under his breath. Yes, I am the guardian of the gate, the key to the gate itself, and all that business, Yog waved off. Anyway, yes, whenever your priests and angels decide to station one or both of you here for the job, you'll be on the list of people we don't mentally fuck with and make them leave the Kungur and the Sultana alone. Irina blinked, looking at Issei, who shrugged. If they're not hostile, it's the safe kind of mindfuckery, the kind where you just go on with your life and never knew anything happened. Creepy, Irina pointed out. But I guess that makes sense. Things man was not meant to know and all that. You said that confidentiality, though, that it will be Irina, myself, or both of us, Zenobia noted curiously. Do you foresee that, time goddess? Yep, Yog answered casually, smirking a bit. Among other things, thud. Zenobia narrowed her eyes warily. What did you call me? Nothing you wouldn't want to be called, Yog said with a smile. After all, I may not be your god, but that doesn't mean I don't know your deepest desires. And no, before you ask, that's not an offer of any kind. I think I like the other one more, Irina said to Issei. You mean Yad? Yeah, they're actually the same person, Issei explained, getting a confused look. Don't ask, time goddess working on different levels of existence. Anyway, I'm here to call this meeting to a close because the center needs her center, Yog informed, looking meaningfully at Issei. The young eldritch sighed. What happened? What's wrong with Aza? Well, while you just played hooky for the day, Aza decided to take a peek in through the illusionary avatar. She has an attending class in her place, Yog explained. Yeah, some girls are trying to convince her to dump you. So, yes, she's really tempted to mind melt some young ladies. Is that normal? Irina asked Issei carefully. Issei just shook his head in exasperation as Yog cut a portal into existence. Well, I gotta go. Ladies, it was lovely meeting you both despite everything. Irina, I hope we can catch up some more before you leave if you leave. Feel free to use this house as long as you need, Issei offered before leaving with a wave. Well, that was interesting, Irina said slowly, looking at Zenobia with a head tilt. What did she mean about your deepest desire? Don't pay it any mind, just tricks of an eldritch god, Zenobia said with a sigh. The days passed peacefully for the king and queen of the eldritch. With things quieting down, to their perspective at least, their behavior could be mistaken for a couple in the honeymoon phase. Every day felt like a date of its own. It was not just them, of course. Be it the other eldritch or the local devils, They found friendly company aplenty. And as the days turned into weeks, one might forgive Issei for relaxing a bit too much. Kungur. Issei opened one eye from beneath the tree. He rested again, looking at Yog, who looked uncharacteristically serious. Well, that look doesn't bode well, Issei said as he sat up. Did something happen? No, nothing new, Yog said with a head shake. Aza needs to tell you something. We've been putting it off so you could both have time together. Perks of a time goddess as your advisor. You know it wouldn't have mattered much if you had been told earlier, Issei murmured. Where is she at? She decided to be a bit cliché and go to the roof of your school, Yog said with a small smile. On a Sunday? Issei asked rhetorically, amused as well as he stood up. All right, thanks. I'll just head there on my own. Any advice? Yog didn't say anything, just smiling as she vanished. You're right. That does not bode well, Drake said morbidly as he made his presence known on Issei's hand. Hey, Drake. Enjoy your hibernation? Issei asked as he stood and stretched. I try to give my wielders privacy when they're intimate, Drake said uncaringly. You're growing scales on your shoulder again. Issei sighed deeply. I'm glad that tearing this off doesn't hurt that much. Oh, it does. You're just learning to ignore pain in a very literal sense, Drake retorted. Don't tell me that. I might actually try starting to feel it subconsciously, Issei complained. Please. Your subconscious is not a masochist, and it is only a sadist when presented with a masochistic lover, Drake countered, getting a weird look from Issei. What? Privacy or not? One tends to notice these things in our situation. With that conversation out of the way, Issei continued to the mostly empty school. He jumped the fence rather easily, and only needed 2 leaps to jump from the ground to the rooftop. Issei, Aza greeted warmly. Aza, Yog said you had something important to tell me, and it didn't seem good, Issei greeted. He knew if he allowed himself to get wrapped up in Aza's affection, they'd both put the conversation off for as long as possible. Aza's shoulder slumped. Right so? Back while you were dealing with Nikrama, I received word of a message, one sent by another goddess. It's about who's behind several things going on here on Earth, Aza explained with some reluctance. Seals wane, shrouded by the madness of rage and hate. The Kungur must know. Well, that's not ominous at all, Issei said under his breath. I'm guessing that means something specific to you. Unfortunately, Aza said with a frown as she looked to the side. Aza, what's wrong? Issei asked, putting a hand on her shoulder. You know about Nirely and some of the other parts of the family, but there are some I try not to talk about at all, Aza said before pausing. One of them is Ngyr. Issei paused as he felt something at that name. He looked over Aza's shoulder and swore he felt something glaring in the unseen and impossible distance. He glared back. This one like Nikrama? Issei asked with a frown. Worse, Aza explained firmly. Koroth is lord of the mad gods. Strange title for eldritch gods, Issei mused. While they are crazy even by our standards, we mostly mean mad, as in angry, when we speak of them. Aza explained, still not looking up. Most of them want to destroy reality, or something equally mad. Issei frowned and stepped closer, cupping her chin. Aza, talk to me. Why do you look so sad right now? Aza mulled the subject a bit before answering. Koroth was my grandchild. Issei blinked. Not at what she said, but how she said it. Of all the eldritch gods, Ngyr Koroth is the only one I have ever truly disowned, Aza admitted with a scowl. He wants to destroy all mortal life. Even the eldritch races, even the simplest beasts. Issei frowned in understanding. And me being a former mortal, he probably hates me more than anything else. Aza nodded, looking up with a sigh. I threw him out of the universe long ago, but he's been able to sneak his way back in. He's powerful enough that he can even hide things from Yog and Shub, mainly because Koroth is their half-sibling. Issei looked shocked by that one. There. Okay, Yog has implied some things about her parents. I'm starting to not like the picture. Trust me, that has nothing to do with Koroth, Aza said with a head shake. I'm sorry I never mentioned this before. I didn't think he'd be acting up so soon. Everyone seems to be getting closer to human time frames ever since we became a couple, Issei remarked idly. I don't blame you. If you told me about every dangerous eldritch, you could have started when we first met and still be telling me today. Oh, it'd be a lot longer than that, Aza agreed thoughtfully. After all, There really isn't any not dangerous eldritch. Issei couldn't refute that if he tried. Still, Karoth. That was the new one to look out for. Meanwhile, Lord Odin, are you sure it's wise to lower our guard already? The king of the Aesir waved off the Valkyrie's words as they walked through the halls of Asgard. It's been over a month, Roswise. On their own, the Eldritch are unlikely to act. Not as a group. The few pests we've had to deal with have proven decent practice for the Einherjar. Roswise sighed and admitted that he did have a point. Are you not worried about someone provoking them, though? Oh, he is definitely worried about that. Both stopped to turn to a beautiful woman with silver blonde hair, smiling at them with sharp chestnut eyes as she leaned against the wall. My Lady Frigg, Roswise greeted in surprise, quickly bowing in respect. Ah, there you are, Frigg, Odin greeted, smiling with casual warmth. Roswise, I hope my husband hasn't bothered you today, Frigg said with a smile, only her eyes moving. The Valkyrie chuckled awkwardly. Frigg's eyes shifted back to Odin. I saw you coming, husband. My eyes are sharp enough to see through time, but even now, I can't see what you're going to ask me. Odin chuckled. I seem to recall that helped gain your attention when we first met, he said before frowning. Wife, regarding the Eldritch. Yes, the last time we spoke of them, you asked if I could see if this love between the demon Sultana and this former human was genuine, Frigg recalled, glancing up in remembrance. And as before, that love is an eternal fact of the universe. Time itself would not dare to get between them. Odin nodded. I wouldn't ask you the same thing twice, least of all that. Tell me, Frigg, have you seen anything of Loki? Our god of mischief, Frigg remarked. Her eyes glazed over slightly. You're wondering if you will not antagonize them. I don't need to see the future to expect that. That fool would unleash something worse than Ragnarok if he did, Odin said with a sigh. Time is generous to me. I do not see the end of this world or the destruction of Asgard. Destiny may not be set in stone, but at the least, the king of the Eldritch will not avenge himself upon us if Loki decides to cause trouble, Frigg remarked. Odin seemed relieved by that, if only somewhat. Frigg's prophecies were not like those of the Greek gods, being the hallmark of tragedy if any attempt to avoid them was made. No, Frigg's prophecies were in likelihood. Could the Eldritch bring war to them? Perhaps, but it would not be caused by Loki at least. Assuming, of course, Frigg's visions weren't compromised. Neither said it, but both he and his wife knew it. There were Eldritch of time, and there were those that could fool time. Nothing was certain, but it would only cause unease if that spread to the others. Roswise spoke up, getting both to look at her. Forgive me, Lady Frigg, but you said the king? Not the queen. Frigg had a dark look about her eyes. I saw the wrath of the Eldritch Queen when those foolish fallen angels made the mistake of targeting her lover. Survival might not be preferable if that were to be unleashed upon us. Luckily, we have a few allies among the Eldritch. Though, I constantly question if Loki doesn't work for the Black Pharaoh in secret, Odin remarked with a huff. He was joking, but it was less than half joking. If he did, even I would not be able to tell until it was too late, for us or for him, Frigg said with a headshake, her brow furrowing. There is a knot. What do you mean, Lady Frigg? Roswise asked in confusion. Frigg often views the timeline as a thread or rope, Odin explained. What she sees as a knot means that point in time is uncertain, and its unraveling could affect everything. Frigg nodded mutely. The queen is tempered by the king. The legions of the unknowable are leashed by the king. Slowly, many factions gather around him. Odin scowled as he gripped his staff knowingly. And the more people are involved, the stupider they can become. Those from different factions, more so, he said, looking at Roswise. We may not be directly attacked, but we can easily become collateral to them. Collateral. He was talking about Asgard, the whole Norse faction perhaps, becoming collateral in some future unrest. It was an alien concept to Roswise, solidifying the scale of things. Roswise, Frigg spoke up with a smile. I need to borrow you from my husband. Huh? Me, my lady, Roswise said in surprise. Odin tilted his head, but didn't speak more. There is a certain something I need you to look into. Don't worry, it should be harmless, Frigg assured with a smile. Oh, of course, my lady, Roswise said with a bow. Where shall I be heading to? A forest in England called Wickwood. I see there we might find something that will grant us favor with the Eldritch, Frigg explained mysteriously. I'll prepare at once, my lady. Assuming you have no objections, Lord Odin. Rosswise added on, embarrassed that she had almost forgotten him for a second. Odin waved her off. Go, go. If Frigg says you should go, then he'll help you if you don't, he answered casually, waiting for the Valkyrie to leave. Do you even know what you're sending her after? No, but as I might remind you, dear husband, I am goddess of many things, Frigg said, leaning down with a sensual grace. Motherhood being one of them. Motherhood and eldritch don't always have a pleasant result, Odin reminded firmly. You're sure this task is harmless? Such doubt from you, Frigg said with a sigh as she stood back up. The task is harmless, but there are things even time itself cannot perceive in such periods like this. Another eldritch could always show up, or one aligned with them. But I am confident that Rosswise would not be easily bested. Odin sighed. Deities of wisdom we might be, but the eldritch have always been able to make us feel like children playing in someone else's sandbox. Sandbox, pool. I'm sure they have their own analogies for us, Frigg said with a chuckle. Don't fear, my grim husband. After all, even the eldritch themselves are adjusting to the sandbox having a new, or rather, an additional owner. Odin chuckled. That was true. He wondered sometimes how those outer gods, and all their many limbs and eyes took it when they found out they had a new monarch to listen to. He liked to imagine they were just a little shocked at first. Meanwhile, getting back to the regular contracts had been a somewhat slow thing for the devils. After all, with everything going on with the eldritch, some things just took precedence. Still, even Rias had gone back to answering some of her own. She narrowed her eyes after she passed through the teleportation circle. The devil princess recognized the house and furniture as her client, but it was filled with blood and gore, dead bodies that had been eviscerated and torn apart. But what's more, there were flickering candles and terrible runes drawn all over the place. And the blood on the floor was moving like serpents and towards a spot behind Rias, to be exact. Don't turn around, please. Rias raised an eyebrow at the voice, one she recognized. Lady E, is there a reason I shouldn't? Something, sloping and flopping, moved in the background. Meaty and wet. Rias decided not to imagine what it might be. I imagine it would ruin your appetite if you did, Yidra answered honestly. I apologize for not stopping them before they summoned you. Rias looked down to see his severed arm, the hand still holding the seal to summon her. I rather liked this woman. She was a lonely sort that liked to pretend I was her daughter while she combed my hair. Bones snapped and twisted in her ears before Yidra answered. My condolences. One of our wayward cults got a hold of her. They told her that they could bring back her daughter after sacrificing you to Cthulhu. Why would he want me sacrificed? Rias asked with a frown. He doesn't, Yidra answered with a yawn that was almost a roar. The blood stopped moving. You may look now. Rias turned and found the mortal guise of the outer goddess meeting her gaze. That woman was fond of her time with you as well, Yidra remarked idly, as the memories filled her. There are always cults trying to go further than we desire. Ambitious, overzealous, even just hijacked by other gods or mortals with their own agenda. Some think that the honeymoon of the sultana and her sultan cannot properly begin until the ending of the earth. I suppose every faction has their radicals, even eldritch cultists, Rias mused, tilting her head. Why are you dealing with this personally, might I ask? Yidra hummed as she moved around the room, the blood and flesh gathering to her still, moving up her legs and vanishing into her formed skin. I thought it was a good time to get myself updated, absorb a few of them, make sure I'm not getting too out of touch with the current state of the mundane world. I see, Rias said in morbid understanding. Is there anything else? Yes, actually, Yidra answered with a yawn. Her teeth still had a rather inhumane element to one side, too jagged and misshapen. Your kitten has a sister. Rias didn't react. Yes, a rogue devil named Kuroka. What about her? Do the devils have any interest in her besides her capture? Yidra questioned with a head tilt. We would appreciate knowing her final fate, but otherwise, no, Rias answered with a suspicious tone. Why? Allow me to rephrase. Do you believe your kitten will take any interest in her well-being? Yidra asked. Now Rias blinked in confusion. No offense, but don't you already know? You have seen inside her mind. I saw a flash of many conflicting emotions, and, with all the healing I was doing, I'm not sure which feelings for her are current or in the past, Yidra explained. Then only Kaneko can answer that, I imagine, Rias decided. Has she been causing trouble for your faction? She treads where she should not, Yidra answered vaguely. If your kitten desires any say in her sister's fate, she should speak soon. I suppose I should thank you for taking Kaneko's feelings into consideration, Rias said, still confused by the entire exchange. Just what was Kuroka up to? Why would she risk provoking the Eldritch? Yidra merely nodded before her flesh began to ripple like shadows and vanishing from the room entirely. Rias sighed. Well, I hope I had the most interesting night out of everyone. As if the universe answered her, a communication spell circle went off. Rias? I'm here, Kiba. What's going on? Is Kaneko okay? Rias asked curiously. What? She's fine, and right here, Kiba answered in confusion. Sona was trying to reach you. There's a situation. What kind of situation? Rias asked with a furrowed brow. At least this wasn't to do with Kaneko and her sister, but just what else was going on tonight? Apparently, Godzilla is attacking? If she had been holding a phone, she would have dropped it. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, there is a giant creature off the coast, and it kind of looks like Godzilla, apparently. Kiba answered. Is the situation contained, or is this on the news? Rias asked with a frown. It's contained, somehow. It wasn't us or Sona, but it's already been concealed by a barrier, and an unknown party is attacking it, Kiba explained. Godzilla. How does one respond to that? I'll be there in a moment. When Rias arrived at the shoreline, she had to admit, it kind of did look like Godzilla. There was a giant, wingless, draconic creature that was coming out of the waters, thankfully far offshore still. Granted, it was bigger than any version of Godzilla she recalled, standing at thousands of feet tall as it lurked out in the water. But it had the wrong shape for the head, a different texture of scales, and it definitely didn't have the dorsal fins on the back. Luckily, it wasn't trying to come ashore. Instead, it looked like it was trying to swat some small flying enemy out of the sky, snarling in rage at the unseen foe. Rias. The red-haired devil turned to see Sona approaching her. Sona, any good news? We got up a barrier fairly quickly. I would say we were keeping a tab on anyone trying to spread information about this. Sona mused as she joined her at the edge of the pier. But it seems no one is, which I assume to mean the Eldritch are already covering this up. More importantly, it looks like this one was provoked, Rias said before frowning as she watched the creature let loose a mighty roar, one that shook the barrier around the shoreline. Sona, am I imagining it, or? His enemy feels like a devil, Sona confirmed with a frown. Who was this stupid to provoke a powerful Eldritch? We should watch out, Rias exclaimed as something came barreling towards them. Both of them threw up a barrier to protect themselves. It held, but only for an instant as the force and speed overwhelmed the shields. It was long enough for both of them to move away, taking to the sky as their wings emerged from their backs. The object struck into a warehouse behind them, dust clouding the area as the building nearly collapsed from the kinetic energy. There was a moment of silence before a figure bolted out of the smoke and soared up into the air, ready to keep doing combat with the creature. Who is? Rias paused as she saw the figure in white draconic armor. Isn't that the White Dragon Emperor? Sona confirmed as she watched him soar into the distance. Well, now we know who this is, in a sense. The dragon roared as his foe approached again, the very sound creating a shockwave that rushed over the shore and broke every window in the area. Valle pushed past the attack and slammed a fist into the snout of the creature, who snarled at the force of the impact. I didn't know the sacred gear of the White Dragon Emperor had been found, let alone converted into a devil, Rias said with a frown. Sona nodded in agreement. That kind of information normally wouldn't stay secret long, especially to them, sisters to two of the Satans. How had this gone under the radar? Rias. Rias pressed a finger to a spell circle that formed near her ear. Aquino, is everyone here? Yes, we're across at the other side of the pier, Aquino answered. Rias paused to look in that direction, seeing her queen with the rest of the peerage and waving to her. She soared over to them, with Sona following her. What should we do? And what are we actually dealing with? Kiba asked curiously as he watched the distant fight. Apparently the White Dragon Emperor picked a fight with an Eldritch, Rias answered bluntly. I don't know if there is anything we can reasonably do in this fight. The only reason my peerage and I can keep a barrier up against this is because of how far away they are, Sona said with a frown. If the battle comes towards the shore, I'm not sure how long it'll last. Kaneko started and glared to the side as, "You are correct, spawns of the underworld." They turned sharply as they saw a fairly familiar eldritch in human sin. "Oh, it's you," Rias recognized, somewhat relieved. "I believe your name was Gaktha? Call me as you wish, Ruinous One," Gaktha said before her blank eyes looked at the Thunder Witch. "Akino, Gakthi," Akino greeted with a smile. "Would you mind explaining the situation to us?" Gaktha grunted and looked to the fight. "That is Uftangshit. He should not be awake." "Why? Does that cause something horrible, like with the Dreamer of Raya?" Sona asked with a scowl. "No. He normally sleeps for no less than what you would call a decade," Gaktha informed. "But he is a great old one. His might is comparable to an unbound and free Cthulhu." A bit of dread came over the devils. "He's holding back," Kaneko pointed out. "Why?" "I hear he is fond of this island and its people," Gaktha answered before looking at the devils again. "Is his enemy of any importance to you?" "Not exactly," Rias answered. "He has the sacred gear of the White Dragon Emperor." Gaktha paused. Realization struck her, and something squirmed under her skin. "The counterpart and rival to my master's own. We didn't even know a devil had it," Sona explained. "You desire him alive for answers if possible. Very well. Then you must assist in restraining him," Gaktha informed, tilting her head. "Is Issei going to be joining us?" Akino asked with a head tilt. "I would prefer we handle this before my mistress and master take notice. She will grow displeased if they are disturbed." Kaneko shivered, prompting Rias to put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Do you have a plan?" Sona asked with a raised eyebrow. Gaktha looked at her. "The devils shielding this conflict from sight belong to you, correct?" "They are my peerage." "Yes," Sona confirmed. Gaktha raised a lanky arm and pointed a finger at Sona. The citriere watched with a grimace as the digit twisted, mutating and mutilating itself into something horrific and gut-wrenching. The tip of the bone was shown, and it was black. Eldritch magic leaped from the digit to Sona in the form of black lightning. Sona and Rias both tried to put barriers up on instinct, but it went right through the shield, ignoring the defenses entirely without breaking them. It went right towards Sona's head before vanishing, a dark aura covering her. "I am not your enemy," Gaktha reminded, even as Kiba tensely held a sword and all others shot her weary looks. "My sisters are also shielding this area from across the cosmos. It will be best to join our efforts. To that end, I have given you a momentary blessing that will transfer to your servants so that we may work in tandem." Sona scowled. "And are there any side effects we will have to suffer for this blessing?" "Days of unpleasant dreams," Gaktha answered simply. "I presumed such to be a paltry cost for this." Sona didn't disagree. "Very well. Rias, you and yours be careful," Sona said as she left to join her peerage. "Gakthi, it would have been better to just offer that first," Akino informed as if she was helpfully lecturing a child. "I am aware," Gaktha remarked as her finger returned to normal. "I will tell Uftang to send this white dragon to us once more. I will help defeat this nuisance. If sparing him is not too troublesome, I will leave him in your hands." Rias nodded while looking to the others who readied themselves for whatever came next. "We're ready," she said. Gaktha nodded as she looked out to the sea, her eyes turning pitch black. The dragon suddenly looked at her. Moving faster than a beast of his size should, Uftang backhanded Valley and sent him flying to the pier once more, cracking the white dragon armor heavily. "Well, you are a tough one," Valley said with a bit of relish to his voice as he stopped himself, preparing to charge again. "Valley, look out!" Albion's voice rang out in alarm. The half-devil's eyes shot up, sensing where Albion had been looking, and saw a dark and pale figure blur at him. He dodged, but one of his wings was partially shattered. He turned to see. He wasn't sure what she was. Extremely pale gray skin of a feminine form, covered in a black carapace-like armor that seemed to be fused into her being. An eyeless horned helmet gazed at him with eerie focus. "Who might you be?" Valley asked with interest. "Careful. This one is dangerous," Albion cautioned. "You shall not disturb the All-Mother or her king," Gaktha said simply. "What dash?" Valley tried to ask, only for her to already be upon him, her armored hand slamming into his armor and throwing him down to the pier. Shit, he cursed just before he crashed. He was quick to try to stand until he felt others around him. Valley cocked an eyebrow beneath his mask as a sword was pointed at his neck, while a small white-hair girl was trying to keep his unbroken wing pinned with surprising strength. Beside them were two more girls, pointing spells of red devil magic and lightning magic at him with rather pointed stares. All the while, the pale female creature hovered overhead. Rias Gremory, he recognized offhandedly. May I ask what this is about? I don't believe I've stepped on any devil's toes yet. Rias frowned. Perhaps, until you started a fight with an eldritch god in the bay. Valley was silent for a moment. Wait, that's a god? He asked in surprise. I believe there is a misunderstanding here, Albion remarked from within the armor. A misunderstanding, Rias repeated skeptically, not lowering her guard. Right. Gaktha lowered to the ground as her form rippled and the human disguise reemerged. While I'm not one to turn down a fight, I didn't come here to fight any of you, Valley remarked evenly. Huh. Guess Sona didn't need the help after all. Kiba mused absently, but didn't remove his sword. I'm afraid that your intent is no longer of any consequence, Gaktha said with a frown as she looked up to Rias. I am sorry. Rias frowned. What? Akino stiffened. Gaktha is, she asked in concern. I have failed, Gaktha said solemnly as she fell to her knees and bowed her head. The devils fell silent, uncertain of her meaning. After all, the White Dragon Emperor appeared to have given up, rather easily at that, and the dragon at sea was groaning in alarm and bowing its head. Rias inhaled as she realized the meaning. Gaktha hadn't come here just to stop this fight. She had come to stop it before it disturbed Azza. So by failed, she meant. No. Rias looked to Kaneko sharply, who had an ashen complex as she trembled. Kaneko what? Rias paused as she noticed something. A trail of piss coming down Kaneko's leg. Oh, what's wrong with her? Valley asked with a frown. Everyone looked up as they saw the barrier around the pier become visible for a moment, a ripple of horrid colors moving across it. Akino sighed with a frown. We're about to have some royal company. Valley was silent as he began to understand the implication. None tried to stop him as they all looked down the pier. It would have been simple if the shadows just got deeper and darker, but they didn't. No, the shadows began to move and stretch unnaturally. Fish in the water began to leap out of the water and onto the dock, trying to cause their own death as a mercy to themselves. Birds dive-bombed to smash their own heads into the pavement. Stray cats and dogs turned rabid, and rats turned ravenous as they all began to kill each other. These sights and sounds filled the air as they watched with terror in the pit of their souls. Everyone trembled at the light, yet very unrelenting pressure mountain on their shoulders. Kaneko crouched down and clutched her head as the sounds of footsteps echoed over the commotion. And suddenly, at the other end of the dock, there she was. Now, just what do we have here? Azza approached them with darkened hair and darkened eyes, her hair moving like snakes and scorpion tails. Why, Your Majesty? Rias tried to speak. I apologize for letting my power slip right now, but I can't seem to contain my displeasure, Azza said without looking at the other devils, her eyes only on Valley. Valley, Lucifer. Lucifer, Kiba whispered in surprise, glancing at Rias, who was equally confused. The Eldritch Queen studied the half-devil briefly. I sense you will be a nuisance, an unwanted distraction for me and issei. Valley smiled despite everything as he gazed at her. I was trying to avoid you, honest, but still, I'm glad that, if nothing else, I get a glimpse at the gap between us. You think you have glimpsed something meaningful? Azza asked tonelessly. Great Sultana. Albion spoke up carefully. I apologize to my host. Albion, Drake's playmate, or rival, or whatever you two call each other. Azza mused dismissively with frigid indifference. You know, I was planning a peaceful day with my beloved on Ufton's backside. Then I'd surprise him by introducing them to each other. The others think they'll hit it off well. I was going to do that today, actually, until a certain vizier of mine said to put it off. But, you see, I know when Yog changes the timeline. I know what would have happened if I didn't put it off, Azza said, her eyes like black holes yet infinitely more terrible. Aborted future or not, I'm rather upset that you were going to be responsible for Issei coming the closest to dying since he joined the ranks of the Eldritch. Rias winced as the ire of the Eldritch Queen radiated in such a way that reality itself seemed to cry out for a merciful death around her. He might actually have died. And then, well, there was a flash, a pulse from Azza that sank over Valley. He saw the world turned into a hellscape of unimaginable nightmares. The sea turned to blood as acid rain eroded the building and pavement, which gave way to reveal the very land had become a twisted and enormous creature of flesh, with endless mouths gnashing at anything and everyone near them. Great leviathans swam in the distances, and the sky was filled with headless vultures who drank by carving their iron wings into the living ground to absorb the blood and meat. Valley, however, trembled as he looked down at himself. He was not just witnessing this, he was a part of this vision. His armor was rusted and corroded, yet also as still as stone, as if it had been filled with cement with him inside it. But there was no cement. If there was, it would have protected him from the creatures he could feel tearing through his body and feasting on his flesh, even as his body healed endlessly beyond what he should be able to endure. He could see them at the joints, terrible and twisted worms of astounding length that were covered in teeth like barbs alike their bodies. "You love to fight," Azza whispered in his ear. "To grow stronger. I'd leave you as nothing more than eternal food for the lowest wretches to survive the death of this world's sanity. You would remain here until you forgot what the concept of power even was, let alone ever recalling you had it." Vala trembled, and he could hear. No, he could feel Albion silently screaming as well. "That's enough, Azza." The Eldritch Queen inhaled sharply as she turned to Iengu. Vala suddenly fell forward as his armor disappeared, his ears and nose bleeding heavily. "Valley? Valley? Are you all right?" "What happened?" Albion called out. "Do you have to ask?" Valley asked as he pushed himself up from the rubble. He blinked as he looked around. He was in the ruins of some warehouse instead of out on the docks. "Valley, you weren't that hurt by the dragon's attack. What happened just now?" "I didn't sense a delayed effect," Albion questioned in bewilderment and concern. "Hey." Valley looked up as he saw Rias Gremory, and that was the Leviathan's sister, right? The Citriere? "Is there a reason you're fighting an eldritch dragon in the bay?" Rias asked with a frown as if this was the first time seeing him. "What's going on?" Vala muttered. "What's going on is you kind of stepped in it big this time, Valley." The devil stiffened, and Valley looked over his shoulder to see another figure coming down into the broken building. One he recognized well. "Azazel, what are you doing here?" Valley asked, spitting out another bit of blood. "Oh, just coming to make sure you don't get killed, or worse," Azazel answered as he looked at the devil princesses, his 6 black wings making it obvious what and who he was. "Azazel, the leader of the fallen angels," Sona realized with a scowl. "Don't worry, I'm not here to cause trouble," Azazel said with a smile. "Our tentacled friends say there might have been a misunderstanding of sorts." "A misunderstanding," Rias said skeptically. "Right." Vala frowned, still confused by what was going on. He looked back to the she-devils, and everything turned gray. Everything grew still. Everything stopped. Vala couldn't move, couldn't sense Albion or even his own power, and could barely think at all. Just in front of Rias and Sona, the air sliced open to reveal a portal. From it came a woman. She wore a sailor's uniform while holding a katana. Vala knew who this was. He knew the mortal guises of all the eldritch gods frequently around Issei. Azazel made sure of that. Azathoth, the outer god of time. She smiled an unfriendly smile at Valley as she walked forward and crouched down to his level. "Congrats. This is the first time Issei asked me to undo a timeline. You caused quite a bit of problems with this stunt." "Well, Azza did. Because of you," Yag admitted with a hum. "Kaniko's poor mind just wouldn't be put back together again. And after our dear queen passed through their shield with her ire unchecked, whatever nightmares Sona and her peerage would have endured would be too much to bear. It was all going to get just too messy if I didn't step in." Vala barely understood what she was saying, but he got the gist. "Oh, don't worry. I know it's not entirely your fault. You just can't help being a battle junkie," she said with a hollow chuckle. "But you're going to have to live with those memories. King's orders. Now, I'm going to leave. You're going to cooperate, and we'll get this all sorted out." "Okay." Vala would have nodded if he could. He wasn't stupid, and he was very confused about where this had gone wrong on his end. "Good," Yag said as she rose up. "For the record, This is the second time I've saved you from Aza. There won't be a third time." With that final warning, she left just like she came, and the world slowly came back into color. "What kind of misunderstanding?" Rias asked doubtfully. Valis sighed as he sat up, ignoring the pair. "Don't worry, I'll explain. I'm guessing that dragon doesn't actually want to fight after all." Sona tilted her head. "You thought it wanted a battle?" Vali wiped the blood from his mouth and began to explain. "And that's it for today? But don't worry your blazing spirits over it, I am back for good. I am experimenting with the black background for all our blazing listeners who are listening in public. If you prefer the gameplay background, please tell me. Now don't forget to like, sub, and share the video for more, and support the amazing writer Akamakami64. See you in the next video.